Hey, we are live. We are live. How fabulous. Let me mute my screen because I know that I'm not muted. Oh, no, it's not even come up yet. Anyways.
I don't hear anything.
All right. Welcome, beautiful souls. This is another episode of Spread This Witches. I am joined today by the sassy Allorah Rayne.
Hey!
Oh my God, that's me in the background. Sorry about that. See, I knew it was going to happen.
Oh, I didn't even hear it. I did. I'm acutely aware. Oh, okay. Well,
You guys can hear me, right?
Yes, I can still hear you.
yeah, no, you're fine. And you freeze
and
on
we
the
have
best
also
faces.
our very special guest with us today. He was a Spread This Witch way back when, and he's back with us, and we're so excited. The beautiful NICO. I think he needs no introduction, but let's introduce him anyway. Scarlet Moon NICO.
Hey, everybody.
Very
How's it going? Hey. Yeah, I was just talking about it. It's been 4 years, you know, and I was like, apparently I'm still an admin on the Facebook page. I didn't even know. I cut my teeth on Spread This Witches for all you.
And they were all making fun of me because back in the day, I taught them all how to use Google Live chats, and now I know nothing.
And now she knows nothing.
Yeah, now she's asking us for help. Oh, I can't get my light right. I can't get it.
Oh my gosh. We've had such a tasty catch up. We had to hop on a few minutes early because, you know, it's been a while and we love NICO, and so we just needed to just have a little catch up, just like a little catch up and go, hey, what's up? It's been ages. And so we had that little time. We are all rocking some cool decks today, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
I didn't actually get the fine. Oh no, I did. I got everyone's, didn't I? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So
it's going to be tasty.
Very much.
Now we're doing Reader's Rescue today. Now, what I would like to do is hand over to the beautiful NICO, who really came up with this concept, this topic, and it's a very important topic, and we were just discussing exactly how important and how necessary it is to have some kind of Reader's Rescue. But I'm going to pass it over to NICO, who's going to explain to you what he pretty much said to me.
Thanks. Hold on, let me just lubricate with a chapstick here. I'm long-winded.
Oh Lord.
Someone's got to mute their camera. Someone's got to mute their camera because I can hear myself echoing, and it's not my camera.
Okay, well, I'm talking, so I can't mute mine. So we'll just wait.
Yeah, you can't.
Okay. No, teasing. No, so the idea behind this was, you know, we had spoken before, and this was just after Allorah came back online, and I was like, and this is an idea I've been mulling over for a good few months. I've actually done more readings for readers lately, and not just readers. Sometimes, you know, they're energy healers. Sometimes they're acupuncturists. Sometimes they're mediums. Sometimes they're just offering spiritual services, selling spells, and, you know, mediumship work and things like that. And there seems to be a certain element or a certain area where, I guess you'd say, the spiritual community or the spiritual topic of reading as a reader or working as a healer professionally, you just kind of get abandoned once you get your breathing right, you have your deck, or you have your crystals, you've got your little certificate, or whatever you're doing. If you do certificates, some of us don't have them. You know, once you have all of that down, you're just kind of abandoned to the world of reading. But there is no talk about how much of a challenge, you know, empathically, socially, or even, you know, just psychologically, it can be when you don't have a way or a place to decompress. And I thought that, you know, again, because for some people out there, and it's certainly some of the people I've been reading for, and a lot of other experienced and very seasoned readers out there, there needs to be, you know, kind of an open forum. You know, what we talk about, counselors and psychologists, they have required sessions, decompression sessions, depending, you know, on where you are. Obviously, it's different here in the US, I'm sure, than it is in Australia and so on. But, you know, you would go in and you would decompress and you would just sort of, okay, how does this work? And I thought, well, let's go into another area here. You know, I know lots of folks who want to become readers. They have a very powerful gift, and they just kind of get overwhelmed by what it means to really be a reader and to be a good reader. You know, if you don't give a damn, you're not a good reader. But you're, you know, if you do give a damn, it takes a toll on you. So that's where a lot of this came in. So I want to, we'll talk about protecting energy, talk about troubleshooting, dealing with different types of clients. I've had people writing in questions on Twitter, you know, different kinds of things, and it's a pretty good, it's a pretty good selection of questions here. So thank you everyone who picked up on that sneaky invite there. So, you know, that's basically where we are, and that's how I give a long-winded bad interview opening.
That was fabulous. That was fabulous. My favorite word that you have just put forth, and you said it to me earlier, is decompress, decompression, because that's the best descriptive for exactly what we're talking about. I think the concept of decompression, and I was saying initially to both Allorah and to NICO that many services that deal with people in an assisted capacity, they have a place to fall back. They have a place to be vulnerable. They have a place to share their woes, their worries, their issues, and just release a little bit without fearing, you know, the impact that that release might have on their reputation in any capacity. And so, you know, it's a beautiful thing to be able to get to a place where you can recognize that there is a lack in something, and then be one of those people who's prepared to offer a little something in return, you know, to fill that lack. And that's what we are attempting to do in the slightest here, is just to address some topics and see if we can't create a bit of camaraderie and a safe place to hold space for readers who have, you know, an issue right now, who might be suffering from, you know, from burnout, who might have just done back-to-back readings and then their mind is all just stuffed because they have just dealt with essentially 12, 16, 20 different kinds of problems for 10 to 15 different kinds of individuals, all with some heavy things. Now, I'm not saying that every tarot reading needs to be there to address heavy topics, but if you are a professional tarot reader, then you will understand exactly what I'm talking about, and that is that people come to you for a safe space and they release their shit. They release their shit and you hold space for that. And then what do you do with that once you've held space for it? You hold it, you're holding on to it, and you're like, nobody wrote this in a book. What do I do with this baggage now? Like, where do I put it? Okay, so my witchcraft tells me that I should bury it in the earth and earth it, and then I should smudge myself and release it. But then what about the psychological implications? Yes, I can meditate. Yes, I can path work. But I'm also a mother of 3. Many of us lead very busy lives. We can't afford to be engaging in these deep insular practices every single time we have an issue as a reader, where our reader stress, where our reader issues build up to a point where you're almost explosive. And let us just say this as well, it does, when you reach that point and you are, you know, tightly wound as a reader because of too much pressure, then that begins to impact on the remainder of your life, on the rest of your life, your family, your quality of life, your friends, etc., etc. And so it's really important to address these issues as they come, and we're going to try and do that. Yay.
Okay, can I say something real quick? Because
Yes.
I had a thought while you were talking. And, you know, when you're talking about energies that we take on, especially as readers, when we're trying to help people through heavy issues or even not so heavy issues, the more people that you read for, that's more energetic connections that you make, so forth and so on. So one of the things that really helps me, and this is something that I not necessarily learned through the craft, so to speak, but this is something I learned as an empath, and it has to do with transmuting heavy energies into a different kind of energy and surrounding yourself with that. So a lot of times, if I don't have time to sit and focus, and, you know, and if I'm, so let's say I'm doing a workshop where I'm reading multiple people to learn, so forth, so on. Typically what I'll do, especially in my car, don't know why this happens in my car, but usually I'm in my car when this happens, but I will take that energy and I will consciously turn it from negative to positive. Because I see energy and color as well as feel it. And so that's what I focus on, changing a darker color into something bright and lighter, I guess you would say. But that's just a little trick that helps me, like on the run, like if I'm doing things and if I'm reading and I'm going somewhere else and I'm going to be in a different place. And that's just good practice, period, whether you're a reader or not. We come in contact with all kinds of people every day, and you can't hold on to everyone's shit all the time. Like, that's just not going to work out well.
Well, I think that for, you know, when we look at, say, the situation that can come up with taking on that energy and people unloading, you know, one of the things that I always try to, and this is so hard to do, by the way, you know, for anyone, it's very hard for me to do. And sometimes I don't even get a chance to do it. And that just, you know, then I have to, I have to do the clearing, the cleansing, the transmuting, the taking time down, the probably equal parts sea salt to water bath, you know, the everything. What I try to do is make sure that I don't open up to do the reading until all of that stuff is unloaded. And again, this has to do with the type of reader that I am versus the type of reader that someone else is. You know, I've never really actually considered myself to be much of an empath, but when I've been looking into empath work, and I'm like, oh my God, maybe there is something I got to study here, you know, because just of how, you know, how blown you can get from unpacking everything. And for myself, you know, how do you read can change how you are going to cope, or how you can cope. I'm the type of person who, you know, will take a reading. I like to put everything under a microscope. I go through everything with fine-tooth comb, you know, and especially when you're doing tarot and astrology, you know, for me, I like to basically, we're going to isolate a situation and basically just look at it in its entirety, how it's going to grow, how it's going to develop over the course of the future, what's going on now, what's your relationship to it, all of those good things. So for me, opening up to do the fine-tooth comb with more and more still being unloaded as I'm trying to do it, it's like, okay, you like say I'm trying to comb this little thing here, and then you keep shoveling stuff on top of it. That's gonna just wear me out right away, you know. So I always make it a point, like, okay, people are going to share, you need to honor them opening up. You got to hold that space for them. Yes, opening up to the higher psychic energy, the informational portion of it, I will try. Like I said, it's very hard to do, even I think for an advanced reader to do, to not open myself up even in that reading until we start reading. And that's where you've got to handle it a little bit more like a counselor in a sense, or like a coach in a sense, where it's like, okay, open up, close up, examine, open up, close up, examine, you know, for yourself and for them, because who hasn't had that situation where a person comes for a 30-minute reading or an hour-long reading, and we don't get to the reading for 20 minutes because you're getting the first draft of them articulating their thoughts and their feelings. It's not all coming out in cohesion. Some of it doesn't make any sense. You're not doing a reading. You're kind of like, oh, okay, we're going to organize this, and this goes over here. We're going to talk about your husband. And we're kind of like all over the place. So you don't start reading then and there. You know, that's one of the things that I would say. Don't start reading there. Wait and contain, you know, hold space. But part of holding space is containing it, because you also want to send that person away feeling empowered. You don't want to send them away feeling empty or drained or exhausted. You know, sometimes I've had people write back emails and say, you know, especially in my earlier days, were like, look, I'm sorry, that felt like a waste of time. I don't want people to feel embarrassed about opening up. But again, it's their first draft of sending that information. And if you do video readings or video file readings, sometimes you'll get people writing questions in their emails, in their letters, or even if you're doing essay readings, and you're having a hard time reading through it because, again, you're getting the first draft of what their intent. That might be the first time they ever said something out loud about what they're talking about. Everything was going on inside their head. So don't open up to psychically receive that bundle in the beginning, because they don't even want you to look at the whole thing. They're just looking for what they want you to look at. Does that make sense?
Well, that's why for me, a lot of times I don't want to know a first draft. I just want you to come and sit and let me juju, and then we will discuss, and then we will reevaluate.
Oh my God. Oh, okay, yeah. I think another aspect to consider then as well, and everything that has been said here has been brilliant, and I'm quite with NICO in the sense that yes, people do say a lot. I mean, they say a lot. I do predominantly video readings through Etsy, and what I get are days worth of back and forth for people, so that I can, and that's necessary for me to get to the question, because they say, oh, I would like to address this the subject of, you know, my husband or my work or whatever, and I'll be okay, very broad. I can work with broad, it's not a problem, but I know that there's more to that. And so I always open up, do you have any details that you would like to add? Are you looking for a specific question, et cetera, et cetera? And I start to gently prod and poke and see if they've got more, or if they're willing to share a bit more. If they're willing to share a bit more, occasionally I hit the right spot. 50% of the time I hit the right spot, and they just like, you know, and it's days of backwards and forth. And I'm like, okay. And after days of backwards and forth, I'm like, so your question is not about your husband. It's, what should I do in my life to make me happy? You know, it's got nothing to do with the husband. It's got nothing to do with the work, you know, and it's only from, you know, really talking it out. But in that process of really, really talking it out, you're taking on a lot. You are, whether it's be written down or said to you or videoed to you, it doesn't matter how the communication comes. It is still going to be very taxing on you when it does come. And that's an important thing. Now, another thing that I would like to add is that for those who are a bit more spirit medium as well, so they sit in a reading and they're very practical, you know, they've read the books and they read very logically the tarot, and then the guide comes in, the God comes in, the angel comes in, the deceased relative comes in, the spirit comes in whichever form you are comfortable referring to that spirit energy. They come in, and you know what they do? They tell you the little something that the person is not telling you, and then you've got it. You've got spirit shit. Then you've got the issue. You've got the crux of the matter from a very worthwhile and very, you know, interesting source, and you have to consider that at the same time. And I find personally, for me, when it comes from spirit, I'm very open. And when I'm very open like that, then I do take it on. And then those readings, to me, I walk away from those readings feeling very heavy. I feel very heavy. And that's when I need to do my 3-part salt and water and my, you know, my rolling around on the grass and laying out in the sunshine and just like, let it go, you know, and that's that time for me. So there is that component to it as well. We're witches, we read tarot. So there are, you know, there's a very good reason that, you know, there's a very good chance, not reason, but very good chance that in a reading scenario, you might not even intend to connect with a spirit or a guide or a guardian of any kind, but inadvertently you'll be like, oh my God, where's this voice come from? Oh my God, what's that energy? Why do I feel like this? You know? And that's another thing to consider, is that when you do open yourself up for a tarot reading, you're opening yourself up, you're playing with the cards. And it doesn't matter how you feel about the cards, your process as a reader will come out naturally and you can't suppress it. So if you don't think that you're a spirit medium yet, then chances are you're going to be dealing the cards one day and you're going to get this little sensation and you'll be like, what the fuck do I do with this? And you've got nobody to talk to about that. You've got no one to decompress with. You've got no one to hold space for you when you think that you're a fucking weirdo and you're hearing voices in the middle of a reading, or you're feeling, you know, like a sensation run through your body, or you're hot or you're cold, or you can smell something. You can smell cooking beef. You can smell rotten apples or whatever. Like you can smell it and it's very hot and you're like, where is this coming from? It can be very startling. It can be very startling, and that will throw you as a reader off. And so you might find in those situations that your reading is not the best. And then that person that you're reading for walks away and did not necessarily receive the best service in that capacity. And then you walk away holding the weight of that situation, of that experience, going, I didn't do my best. This happened. Who can I talk to about this? I mean, it's a very specific scenario, but it is a scenario. And when you're open to working with the cards, when you're spiritually minded, when you're a practitioner of witchcraft, or you just subscribe to New Age philosophies, you are going to be much more open than the average bear. That's what I have to say about that.
I think you're absolutely correct, and I think that honestly, when I've gotten to the point where I just accept that mediumship moment as an inevitability. You know, because I mean, a person who goes in and memorizes the cards and is kind of like, no, I really need to somehow cram the information I'm getting into the context of the Queen of Pentacles, is missing the point. You know, the Queen of Pentacles might not make any sense until you listen to what that spirit has to say or what that influence has to say. And then, you know, if it must, maybe it doesn't at all, that takes precedent, you know. And I think that when you open up, you've got to be aware, you know, that, yeah, there's things that are coming out that may not have anything to do with what you think you're asking, because we haven't cleared the air. And sometimes you need to clear the air for the spirit to come through. And because going back to what we were talking about before, and I saw somebody in the comments make a mention, and they made a very good point. Yes, venting can be a very important part of you know, of a session, of a consultation. I mean, venting can be important for people, but I do draw a line, and this is where the line, and I'm not drawing a line between what is good and what is bad. I'm saying I draw a line because some of us read some ways and some of us don't read some ways. You know, there are very good readers, very reputable readers, and very, very talented readers who are discovery, emotional processing, personal development oriented exclusively. And that is where you tend to see a lot of that happen, and a lot of that works out very well with them. Some of us, and I would dare say, I would say Avalon is, you know, is very close in the same boat as me, though I think that your mediumship abilities far surpass mine. No, believe me. I would say I'm definitely more of a pragmatic. People ask me, are you new age, old age? I'm like, I am old school. You know, I am the witch in the woods. I am the fortune teller in that way. You know, we're going to look at the tarot and astrology. We're going to give you dates. We're going to give you descriptors of people. We're going to talk about this, you know, in a reading. You know, I've had love readings with people before where I'm kind of like, no, there is somebody coming. I'm seeing that they're divorced. They have a son. All of these kinds of things, like they just kind of come, you know, pouring out of that session. So I tend to focus a bit more on a style of reading that might not necessarily be mainstream nowadays, but for me to get to that, the vent has to have a line at some point, you know, and that's just the boundary that I put. Now, I'm not saying that venting is unhealthy or bad. I just think that you've got to eventually also know what your core intent for the reading is. You know, it's like you said with, you know, you go through days of email. I gotta have to try that sometime. I'm gonna have to try that. I have an outline. I have a questionnaire that I send people, you know, no more than 100 words, but it's basically, yeah, what is this? Birth date, time, and location. What's your question? What are your concerns? How long has this been going on? And that's about it, you know. But I mean, maybe I should follow up like that, because for me, I don't want to go and dive into something, again, fine-tooth comb something that's incomplete. Or if I have to look at an email and be like, okay, what is he asking me? I know what questions I would ask in this situation. I'd want to know what was happening here. Maybe he didn't care about that, you know? So I'm like, it's kind of, there has to be that level of curiosity, you know, in what that person is doing. It's not just about making them feel good. I've done plenty of readings where I don't make people feel good about their choices. I make them feel good about their solutions, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
You know. Allorah, you look like you were going to say, oh, there we go. I was like, she looked like she was going to say something.
Yeah, no, I had to unmute my microphone. But I saw back on that comment in the chat box in the feed where they were talking about venting and how that's an important part of the process. Right now, I'm not doing readings online, you know, right now. I will if you come to me and you're like, hey, really need a favor or something like that, but I'm not doing it in a professional capacity right now. But anyways, I'm talking in person. So when I say I want somebody to come in and just sit down and let me deal out the cards, read them one time over, and then say, okay, what is it that you're wanting to know? And then we go over the issue, reassess, reapply, those kinds of things. So venting does happen in my sessions. It's just, it's not at the beginning, because I also feel like I don't want you to overshare before I get a chance to get unadulterated, very objective cards that come up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's another thing too. And I think it comes down to the approach. And, you know, quite frankly, I like to consider myself to be pretty versatile in a reading. I'll read for someone, you know, via video. I'll read for them across a table. I'll take my cards out to a park or a cafe, and I'll read for, you know, I experienced several different scenarios. And within those several different scenarios, there are several different people. Within those several different people, there are several different approaches. And so my standard approach on Etsy is very different to what I do when I'm sitting in front of a person and I have their feedback, you know? And so I like to create a comfortable conversation scenario. I tend to believe that because of the type of reader that I am and the type of person that I am and how I work energetically, I attract the right kind of clients to me. I attract the clients that I'm going to resonate with, you know, and I tend to do pretty well in that capacity, as I attract people with a very open mind and who are willing to sit down and just go, okay, let's have this experience, right? And so I tend to go with whatever I feel is best at that time. There are some people who sit in front of me in a face-to-face scenario, and you can feel their sense of urgency. And in that capacity, I want to move quickly for the reading and I want to discuss things. There are those who feel like they're holding on to something dark and deep and they don't feel like they're going to shift it, in which case I'll approach that in a very different scenario. And then there are those who just are very lost. They don't even know what kind of question they want to ask. And then so I open myself up in different ways, in different settings, depending on the person. And I think that, you know, when you read multiple times, like when you cultivate a good reading practice, you learn to be adaptable in that scenario. And within that scope of adaptability comes the protective measures. And so for the person that likes to get a love reading every 6 months, the same person likes the love reading every 6 months, there's a standard response. There's an adaptability scenario there, you know, like they come to me, I know exactly what they're doing, and I know exactly how to prepare myself for that particular scenario. You know, with regular clients, you tend to build up a bit of a rapport, and it's, you know, it's great. It's easy, and you know exactly what kind of measures to apply in that specific scenario. Does the person like to talk out the situation? Yes, they do, in which case you allow time for that. Does the person not like to give too much information? No matter how many questions you ask, that's fine. So you allow time for that. And I think it's like assessing your clients is really important, and then becoming adaptable is also very important. So being a rigid reader, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but being a particular kind of reader who only has the one approach will serve you well up until a point. You know, you'll be a good reader, but it won't allow for versatility. It won't allow for, you know, the side ball, so to speak, the exception, not the rule kind of client. And we all get the exception, not the rule kind of client from time to time. You do 50 readings, you might get 2 exceptions in there. You might walk away with those 2 exceptions going, what the fuck was that? Like, the fuck, you know? What am I supposed to do with that? I was feeling really good after Granny, and you know, I was feeling awesome after the Postman that I read for, but then these 2 sideballs, these 2 oddities came through and they shake you. And then what do you do with that? What do you do with that? You've done everything that you can. You've applied versatility and you've applied all your measures, but something about their stories has still stayed with you. Something that you've never heard before, something that is so unfamiliar to you, and that you have had to address a scenario that you don't know anything about because you have never experienced anything like that before in your life. They come to you, end up across the table from you, and you're supposed to read for them with absolutely no experience. And yes, you can do it. Yes, the cards will tell you what to do, but it's what to do with the sensation that courses through your body when you're looking down the barrel at a reading like that. You know, an amazing story. Like I have actually read for a refugee. I've read tarot for a refugee, and I'll tell you, I held on to that. I hold on to that story still to this day, because that was an incredibly abnormal, unbelievable, holy fucking shit, mind-blowing reading. And what do I do with that? What do I do with that particular kind of thing? So the decompression and the reader rescue, it addresses all of these things. You know, you have to hold space for all of these abnormalities within a reading space. And there are so many abnormalities within a reading space. Yes, we all have our tactics. We all have our standard responses. We all have the things that we like to do and our processes and what have you not. But holy cow, when one comes through and the story is so like, what do you do with that? And that's just one example of how the emotion can stay with you for a very long time, and it's very difficult to shift that kind of emotion in that particular situation. It might be easier to shift different kinds of emotion, but you know, from time to time you will get some heavy stuff come through and some things that, you know, just, you know, they disturb you. They're genuinely disturbing, and you need to know what to do with that, and you need to understand that it's okay if you don't immediately know how to unpack that and put it somewhere special, that you've got some people that you can go to and say this. And it's okay to feel a little bit broken in those situations, because we're all human beings. We're tarot readers. We're human beings. We're ethical intuitives in many cases. And it's okay to feel a little bit broken from time to time. It's part of the tarot humanities process, I think, anyway. Did I stay on point then?
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, for me, I think that, you know, you hit a very good point there. You know, what do you do with all of that? What do you do with that? You know, and I've had insane readings, you know, very similar to, you know, yeah, whether it's refugee stuff, people getting ready to, you know, be deported, people who are having problems with Interpol, like crazy things, you know, and very, very heavy stuff. And I think that the only advice I can give, because no, there are times where I walk away completely, you know, just kind of like, I can't. I don't even feel right trying to call my energy back from that person. Let them keep it. They need it. I'll just go find some more somewhere. I'll just find a plant. You know, the situation that happens, I think, is that I always ask myself, did I close that? Did I close it in a way that we both have closure from this situation? Did I do a good enough job closing it so that we both have closure from this encounter? And that's where I think the rigidity can be good to a degree. You know, I think that versatility is a big deal. But again, it also comes back to, do you know what kind of reader you are? And standards and practices, honestly, when it comes to readings, only apply so much. Okay, I am not that reader that can just kind of like grab the cards, whether it's the Modern Spellcrafters Tarot or Lucy Cavendish's, you know, Forest Fairy Tarot or whatever, I mean, Oracle. I can't go and just be like, what does this person need to hear? 1, 2, 3. That is not in my toolkit. That is not how my guides communicate with me. They don't even communicate with me that way on my own stuff. You know, so what I look at is, how do we keep the air clear? So I actually, and I don't know how you all feel about this, Avalon, Allorah, or even, you know, audience, I will go and I will actually work on integrating sort of a healing or a cleansing or a purification on the person I am doing the reading with while I'm doing the reading. It's going on in the background, you know, whether it's a road opener, an uncrosser, you know, rocking the, you know, the hoodoo stuff, right? So it's like, yeah, road opener, an uncrossing, just a standard blessing, jinx removal. You know, I kind of keep that in the background because my biggest challenge is clearing the air, you know, when it comes to people. I mean, here's the thing. I've had readings where I've basically been like, yeah, this is what we're finally talking about. Or I've had the cards say, how many people have had the cards actually say, this person's lying to you? You need to get...
Ooh, me.
No, and they don't tell you the real. They don't tell you the real truth. The cards don't tell me the truth. Instead, I've literally had the cards read out 7 of Swords, Queen of Wands reversed, 8 of Swords, and 3 of Swords, and I'm like, could we rephrase this, please? Like, I mean, but then I've gotten braver, and you've got to get braver too. Some people do lie. Some people do omit information, not because they're nasty, not because they're awful people. Sometimes the fear of culpability takes us. You know, if we're feeling self-conscious, if we're feeling embarrassed, if we're feeling, you know, threatened, if we're in a, you know, if you're feeling like if you know you're going to get persecuted for being in the situation you're in, what you've done or what you think you're going to do next, you know, you're going to do that. And I've had people do that, you know, and it's like, oh God, okay, so look, and I tell this person, I'm like, look, we're going to clear the air right now, because the way I read is, my guides and I, very much genie in a bottle. We read the question you ask, whether you're telling the truth or not. That's up to you and your responsibility. That's where my ethics go. You know, my ethics go right here. It's like, okay, so if you ask me a lie, then the reading's going to be about the hypothetical situation that is your lie, which means it might not come true. In fact, it probably won't. So I always tell people, like, that's how I probe into this. Now, if you want to look at the truth of the situation, sometimes the cards will really want to help you out, or my guides will really want to help you out and be like, she's leaving half the story out, or he is putting his own spin on it. Keep an eye on this. Right? And so I will go into that, and sometimes it won't. But one of the things that I would say is the clear air also brings the closure. You know, it's because when you think about, Norse pagan tarot witch, the genie in the bottle, it's kind of like we've all heard about, you know, people making the wish the wrong way, and suddenly the genie grants the wish in a funny, screwed up, messed up way. It's a monkey's paw, you know, and it's sort of the way I look at the closure in the clear air is, look, you're going to walk away feeling better no matter how dire or terrible your situation was when you got here, because you know it applies to you. I don't give hope speeches when I do readings. I don't do inspirational stuff. I mean, maybe that makes me a horrible person. Maybe that's just fine. I don't know. But for me, I kind of say, like, look, this is catered to you. And we're both in this, so we have to close this. All right. You're dealing with a refugee situation. No, you have no way to emotionally reference that in your past. I would hope not. It's a scary situation to be, you know, but if you have this and you're saying, look, we need to clear the air, and you're even getting cards that you wouldn't even tell somebody, if their advice as a refugee for survival is King of Swords reversed, Five of Pentacles reversed, and, you know, give it to them. You know, give it to them. You're there to get them on their path, whatever that path may be, as long as it doesn't harm anyone or cause collateral damage, you know. Allorah's got her hand raised.
Yeah, so this is kind of where my empath is a blessing more than a curse, because when I get into uncomfortable situations where things come up where it's very obvious that somebody is not telling the truth, it kind of helps to put my spidey senses as to how I'm going to approach it, because I've had to approach things delicately with some people, and other people, I just had to lay it out very blunt. I remember I had a guy one time, and this is like one of my favorite stories because he was a total tarot's not real. This is all crap, blah, blah. So he had sat down and the cards came up and I was like, so you're cheating on your wife? And he was like, holy shit. I was like, okay. I was like, just so you know, I know. And that's why, like, before I read people, I'm very blunt about, if there are things that you don't want me to know, please don't sit here, because I promise you they will come up and it will be uncomfortable, and I will be able to navigate how to relay the information. But sometimes I get told this needs to be, you just need to hit them with it. And sometimes it's like, no, you've got to really be gentle and kind of guide them along through the issue, if that makes any sense. But yeah, so definitely I think that there are different ways to deliver information that come up in the cards, especially if you have somebody who's not being truthful.
Well, I think that, yeah, I mean, a certain measure of learning how to read a room is going to be absolutely necessary, you know, in this circumstance. I mean, there are some people I'm not tough as nails with, you know, for a reason. You know, they don't need it. That's not what they, you know, it's not about whether or not they came for it. I'm just kind of like, all right, this guy, you know, he just had a funeral for his mom. He just moved across town and changed jobs, and then he found out that his son doesn't want to talk to him anymore. I think tough as nails is probably inappropriate here. you know. But yeah, but if some people need that, because again, it's going to clear the air, it's going to break the ice, it's going to break down that wall, break down that barrier. And that's the point that I make with people. I say, I don't do spiritual protections except for the cleansings and things like that during the session. I don't put shields up for myself when I'm doing readings. I want to be wide open for that. I'll recover somehow. You know, I'll recover. I've got my own ways of rejuvenating my energy, but I don't do barriers. So you don't do barriers either. That's what I always tell people. It's like, do not come in with, you know, behind three inches of bulletproof glass if you want to actually have somebody probe in and give you something that's going to mean something for your life. You know, if you are more concerned with saving face than succeeding in this operation, I'll give you a gift certificate and I'll see you in a month. You know, that's just basically how it's going to have to go. And I think that, again, going back to Avalon saying, you know, with the reader rescue, how do you decompress from all that? I think the point that you're making, Allorah, and the point that I'm making are very similar. Being tough enough to kind of actually fight that negative energy when you're in the moment. And you're not fighting the person. You're not fighting the person. You're fighting the energy. And that's something that a lot of people don't really know how to tell the difference with. You know, when it comes to, say, fighting the action, condemning the action, condemning the energy, people are like, well, that's my action. That's my energy. No, I'm fighting something you put out there. I'm not fighting you. You know? If I disagree with something that Allorah says, you know, if I'm disagreeing with something that Allorah says, or I'm disagreeing with something that Avalon says, and we have a talk about something somebody says, it doesn't mean that I'm judging, how dare you even put that out there, you know? And I think that we have to be okay as readers to engage in those open dialogues with our clients, but sometimes we're not allowed to. We don't feel like we're allowed to. We feel like we're supposed to be these loving receptacles. You know, we take in the garbage and we put out light. That's not who we are. You know, nobody's like that. Nobody's, you know, nobody is the, you know, nobody is meant to take on all of that. I think that you can help somebody learn to stop with that. You know, I was like, I will fight the demons you're bringing, you know, just like, and you know, and I will fight my own demons. You know, that's what you got to do. And it's not judgmental. You can identify it and acknowledge it without saying it's judgmental. And that's how maybe you don't prevent burnout, but you do elongate the spans between burnout and burnout. You know, so instead of it happening every year, it's happening every 3 years, or it's happening every 5 years. But you have to be okay to clear the air in the moment. Because I think that in our society and our spiritual space, we are so, I think insular is an interesting word choice that Avalon used, but I would say we're also very insulated in a lot of ways. We want this information. We don't want to be vulnerable. We're wounded, so we're already on the defense. There's a prey mentality. You don't know when it's time to fight, flight, or play dead. So as readers, we know that sometimes people come with that energy. Not everyone. Not everyone. Certainly not the vast majority of people, but usually it is the odd case that causes us to kind of go, ugh, you know. So we've got to, you know, we've got to look at that, and you have to be able to confront the negativity in the moment. Don't carry it with you. Don't take it off and try to decompress it later if you can help it. Cancel it in the moment. Get closure at the end of the reading. Get closure during the reading. Confront it in the present. You know, I mean, there are plenty of things that drain my energy in a reading other than that. You know, but this is, when we talk about confronting negativity that somebody brings, you've got to make it feel like the reading is over when it's over. You know, and the only way to do that is to be present with those emotions, not worry about self-protection, not worrying about, you know, how many artificial boundaries a person puts up to get through the day. You're only there for an hour, and more often than not, less. So everyone can take that 15 minutes, that 20 minutes, that 30 minutes, that hour to be vulnerable and do some air clearing to do a good reading. And then and believe me, there will be much less pieces to pick up afterwards. It's kind of like cleaning up the kitchen while you're cooking. If you clean while you cook, you don't have to do so much washing up, you know?
Good analogy.
Love it. Love it. I love it. And you're absolutely right, NICO. It's great to have some of your lovely hoodoo things mentioned going on in the background. And for me, when people actually have a look at my readers table, they're just like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is this? Because I have skulls, I have crystals, I have statues of deity, I have scrying mirrors, I have everything. And people think, oh, wow, that looks really pretty. I promise you, everything that's on my table is here to assist me in the job that I do when I sit in this chair and when I share space with other people. My skull is a fetch, you know, the herbs that I have are protective. I don't cast circles and barriers, but I do have tourmaline because it is a neutralizing stone. So that when the energy in the room escalates to a point where I don't feel like I'm capable of holding on to it anymore, my stones, my grids, my herbs, my crystal, my statuary, sacred waters, oils, you name it, they're there to just like help me out a little bit, to ground that space down. And that's how I sort of allow myself to be as open as I possibly can during a reading, so that I can give the best of what I am capable of giving to a person that I am reading for, to a client. And I actually hate the word client, but you know what I mean, you know, to the person that I'm reading for, to the person that I'm sharing sacred space with. And you know, and that's a really, really beautiful thing. And then knowing when to switch that off is very, very important. It's extremely important. And it's okay to leave your reading on a bad note. It's okay. You've done your reading. You've pulled your sugar cards at the end. You've pulled your hug cards from your, you know, your beautiful Oracle deck, and you want to try and give them a hug. And it's like, don't be an asshole. And that's the last card. Well, you know, then don't be an asshole. And just contemplate this idea. But look, I want you to understand that you might be being an asshole right now. And it's okay to acknowledge that you're being an asshole, but just hold on to that for a little bit and do something with that. You know, it's okay to end on a bad note. You know, you don't have to be an asshole about how it ends, but you do have to be honest, and you do have to know when to switch that off immediately. Now, as I'm talking, I wanted to address a question that was put through, and that is, what do you do when a person keeps coming to you with the same question, hoping for a different answer? Personally, for me, I tell them to find another reader, because I don't have time for that. That's my precious time. You know, I'll read for them once. If they come back with exactly the same question, I will kindly say, I'm not the reader for you. There are many experienced, wonderful readers out there. I suggest you find someone who you really resonate with, because if they're not listening to me once, they're not going to listen to me twice or thrice. And we're just going to keep going on and on and on. And I'm going to keep taking this person's money, and it would be unethical for me to do so, in which case then I let it go. You know, and that's important, to take responsibility for those situations that you know well and truly ahead of time, before any information is exchanged, that you are not capable of helping that individual. And that's okay. That is okay, because occasionally you do get people. I had a person, like, I take this for instance, I do not market myself as a fortune teller. Yet no more than a month and a half ago, I had a person come to me and ask if he was going to win money on this particular Super Bowl game. It's something very American, and how much was he going to win, and what was the margin going to be? And I got back to him and said, I'm not a fortune teller. I sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, I think it would be better for you to find someone who markets themselves as a fortune teller. In which case he said, oh, okay, yeah, no, I totally understand. Do you just get a strong yes or no feeling? Like, he came back to me with a yes or no, and he kept on going and he kept on going. And I'm like, obviously this person is not the right client for me. I'm not a fortune teller. This is not someone I can feel that I can help. And so I didn't take his money and I sent him away. I actually gave him a refund. I'm like, there you go, on your way. Here's some recommendations of some fortune tellers that I know happen to be very, very good. You know, do your worst kind of business. And it's okay. It's okay to shut the door from time to time. It's okay to terminate a reading when things are, when you feel that things are fine, or whether or not they finish up on a good note or a bad note. I think the entire purpose is to assist someone to work through a situation and to provide them with comfort in a different perspective, you know, and how to cultivate a different perspective, and then how to find the strength within themselves to execute that different perspective, so that they can really cause some form of transformation within their lives. And this is not necessarily the easiest job to do, because you know, you have to be very, very open to whatever that person is saying and take on some of that emotion that that person is projecting out, so that you can really get to the crux of the matter and start to see things through another individual's eyes. And I think that's part of being an empath as well, is that you can feel to that point where you do feel like you're looking at the situation through somebody else's eyes, and you're holding on to some of that emotion. And that's a really important and precious moment in and of itself. But then learning how to shift it effectively as soon as you're done, just like let it go now, and then shutting the door, we're done, thank you very much, and then, you know, doing a follow-up, allowing the questions to come through if they've got any questions, you know, after that, and slowly start to decompress from that reading, and just make sure that that person goes away feeling better in some way than what they came to you with in whatever state. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does make sense. You know, and I do market myself as a bit of a fortune teller, but there's a bit more, you know, wrapped in there. There's a lot happening. You know, I certainly wouldn't be able to like describe it in 30 words, but I definitely do market myself in that way. You know, like I said, among other things. But I would say that for myself, what I like what you said was there was a strategy involved, that you were solution oriented. And I think that it can be hard to be solution-oriented sometimes when you know a person is not at a place where they are in a place to take action. You know, we had the venting comment earlier. Some, you know, again, some readers are out there doing very good jobs being, you know, emotional discovery, emotional processing readings. You know, what is really happening? We're helping you actually. You know, some people. There's a phrase. There's a condition. It's called alexithymia. It's not. We're not going around clinically diagnosing anyone here, but it's when a person cannot articulate or identify an emotion that they are feeling. And we've all had, you know, people come in for sessions who are practically stricken with that just from sitting down or being on the phone. You know, it's sort of like, I don't know, I am awash with these sensations. They are powerful, they are painful. So yeah, maybe they do need an emotional discovery reading or a processing reading. I even have a default processing spread that I have. You know, like I'm in a class that I teach, I say, okay, here's an example. So-and-so's doing a reading for this person. This person cannot, you know, they probably didn't even need to be here. You know, they are not in a solution-oriented place. Now, if you are not if you're not the solver reader, the strategy guide reader, the war room reader, that's different. That's different than me. You know, I am the war room reader. I'm like, okay, you come here because we're ready to execute this situation, you know, or your ex or whoever. You know, we're going to go and deal with this, and we're going to confront it head on. So I think that one of the best ways to, again, make sure that you don't, I think the reader needs to have closure from their readings, you know, so don't be afraid to compassionately chaperone the reading. I've even had situations where I've apologized to people. I'm like, look, I have not chaperoned this reading very well. You know, you will lose all your, the way I look at it, you will lose your energy in the rabbit hole. And I know that doesn't sound very compassionate because, again, we want to mind people's boundaries. We want to empathize in the present with what a person's going through, but they are paying you their hard-earned money to get something put together. And if you charge them money to do what they can do with a friend for free, having a bitch on the phone, and you're losing all your energy, you just basically sold your energy for so many dollars, which I don't think is good for a reader to do. This is just my personal ethics. I'm not saying I'm better than anyone else. I'm just saying I'm a different type of reader, I guess. You know, it's just, I don't agree with selling, you know, trading energy for dollars in that regard. And I think that the best way to do it is to, you know, call bullshit when you need to call bullshit. Tell somebody to stop venting for a minute. I've been like, I've actually done that with people, you know, because it's like, no, we've gone around this again, you know. We need to actually kind of, you know, either we're going to solve it or we're not. What do you want to do? Otherwise, we'll change the subject. Going back to your question about the person reading over and over and over again, I've had that happen. I've refunded people, you know, especially if they come back in rapid succession. You know, if somebody asks me the same question in 3 months, I'm kind of like, you're not letting this develop. You are not letting this develop at all. Every time you get a reading, you're putting another road on the crossroads here. You know, at first there were two, left or right. Now there's left, right, and forward. Now there's left, right, forward, and a little bit to the forward right. And now there's this one over here. Every time you get a reading, you're adding another road to that crossroads. Do you know what you're doing? I don't feel ethically right charging you for the emotional blender, you know, that this is. Let this play out. You know, that's what I would tell them. I'd be like, yeah, here's a refund. Let this play out. And if you're not satisfied, you know, with the reading, we can talk about it. If it was, you know, if you feel like, you know, it's not the outcome you desired, maybe you found out, no, that man's just never going to be with you, or you should go to a different college, or your family situation, you know, is not over with, you probably, you know, whatever is happening there. If you're not satisfied with that answer, I don't know what to say. I'm not here to give you a satisfactory answer. I'm not here. My job is not to put a smile on your face. My job is to help you succeed in whatever you're trying to achieve. You know, and if I see you going down the rabbit hole or going into a dead end, the nice thing to do is say that's a dead end. You know, not, yeah, you'll get it. Keep going, girl. Yeah. You know, like, no, that's a dead end. Like, I don't call bullshit when you need to call bullshit, whether it's, you know, the situation, you know, call, you know, compassionately do it. There's a compassionate way to do it. But I think that as readers, we need to be tougher. You know, you are opening up a space. It is your space. You are holding a space. It's on your space. It's on that energy. They are, and that you take responsibility for your job to right a wrong that occurs in your space. You know, and I think that we've gone a bit soft the more mainstream this gets. I'm sorry to say, I'm not trying to get political. I think that we've gone a bit soft. I'm sorry. You know, when I think about,
Oh, I was just gonna say, not me. I don't know what that is.
No, I think as a culture, things have gotten a bit soft. You know, we've got a lot of things as, it's not about being hard as nails, but when I think about the priestesses, I think about the Zen masters, I think about the martial arts masters, I think about all the people, all the wise men and women of yore who would beat your ass with reeds and, you know, and basically kind of be like, no, girl, sorry, you know, or they would be, you know, there'd be points being made, right? I'm not saying that we need to be hard on people who don't need to be hard. Again, read the room. But I think that it would be easier for readers to feel good if they knew that they demanded respect instead of expected respect.
Exactly right. I think the concept of respect, that's the word that kept on churning through my brain just then, is that as a reader, you need to have respect for yourself, and you need to have respect for your craft, and then you need to have respect for your client, for your friend, for the person that you're reading for the sitter, right? There needs to be so much respect in the room, and within that construct of respect, there will be times where you have to respectfully close that space down, where you will have to respectfully say the hard thing, where you will have to respectfully leave that person feeling like they understand what's going on, but it's not a warm hug. Like, you just haven't had a reading with me and I've given you a warm hug. You've had a reading with me and I've what I feel like you need in order to access an authenticity within you, to do the difficult thing, to make the difficult choice. But it's up to you to then do that. It's up to you to then execute that, you know. Don't come to me and ask me for something and I give you that exact something and then walk away and do absolutely fucking nothing with it. You know, that is a waste of your time. That's a waste of my space. That's a waste of my time. And I think that within the construct of tarot readings, there needs to be an exchange there. There needs to be okay, I listen to what you're saying and here's what I think would be best for you at this moment in time, in accordance with what I'm seeing here, what I'm feeling, etc., etc. And then that person, the logical mind, the great client, is going to walk away and go, right, okay, I have the building blocks that I need now to put this into motion for myself. Yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, it's going to be difficult. No, I didn't just receive a warm hug. I received a clear path, the outline of a clear path. And if I walk that clear path, then you know, something good will come to me as a result of that, because I will be connecting with the authentic part of myself, and that will, you know, improve my quality of life in that regard. And that to me is the outcome of a great reading. You know, you get a great reading from someone, it comes down to respect. It's respect. You respect the process, they respect you as a reader, they respect you enough to take your advice and to walk away with that advice and then do something functional with it. And it's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be the warm hug. Occasionally it is. Occasionally it is the great hug. Occasionally you get a reading and it's just like sunbursts and sunshine and there's butterflies flying out, there's rainbows and all this beautiful color. There's a leprechaun at the end of the rainbow. Like, it's fucking awesome, right? And you're like, oh wow, like this is awesome. Like, you're gonna have like a wonderful time. Like, you've got so much here in your reading, so much potential, so much opportunity, and you can leave a person feeling charged, like incredibly like pumped for what their opportunities are, or what they can do with those opportunities, etc., etc. You know, their options. They're pumped for their options, put it that way. And then there are times where you will get the person that has come to you with a really difficult question, and you've read for them, and the answer to their difficult question is also a difficult answer. And in those regards, you still have to respect that process, and you have to do right by you, right by them, and deliver the you know, the answer as you see it in the cards, and as you feel it within yourself, and as you hear it within your guides, and always be 100% honest, and just respect the entire process from start to finish. If you don't feel like you're getting that same respect in return, then that is perfectly good grounds to say, stop right there, this is not happening. Because it is a tremendous amount of power and respect to close those doors as well, to say, no, I'm not putting up with this. No, actually, you've spoken too much. Let me just now do my job. Like, you really do need to be the controller of that space. You need to control every element of that space. You need to make sure that you give the person enough time to speak, but also not too much time that it eats through the entirety of the reading, and you've only got 5 minutes to then deal out a quick handful of cards, because they're not going to really walk away with feeling as though they've had the best experience in that way. And I know for myself, when I sit down to have a reading done for me, I want my reader to control that fucking space. I want to say what I've got to say. I want them to go, okay, I've got what I need, take a note down, throw the cards out, and then start to address things. And if I don't find that they're giving me or they're not asking me a difficult question, and I'm not having to dig deep for a difficult answer, then I'm not feeling very nourished in that scenario. In that scenario, like, I want to have the transformative experience. I want to have the reading with the person that's going to be 100% honest. I want to have the experience of an ass kicking from time to time, because let's face it, occasionally we just need to be schooled, don't we? And it's okay. And it's okay to go to a tarot reader to be schooled. I'm not the type of tarot reader that's going to give you necessarily a warm hug. I'm 50-50. I'm 50-50 warm cuddles, yay, and don't be a fucking cheater. Like, I'm that person, you know. I'll read the room, and I'll do what is necessary in that moment, and within those readings, and dealing with the plethora of clients that one does see. So,
well, you know, it's interesting, the topic of what kind of ethicist you are comes into question here. And when I talk about ethicist, I'm talking like in terms of now we're going into philosophy. We did spirituality, then we did psychology, we went back to spirituality, now we're coming back to philosophy. And we talk about the nature of what kind of ethicist you are. You know, for those of you who do know philosophy stuff, I'm talking about normative ethicists, you know, ethics, not the whole plethora, because we don't have time. But, you know, there's 4 different types of, you know, normative ethicists that we have. You know, there's relationship-oriented, virtue-oriented, deontologist, and utilitarian. And I think that changes how the reader reads. And I think that we resonate with certain people, and certain people we don't resonate, because we're meant to be challenged in that sense. But I think that a lot of what is really powerful, yeah, I just did 2. Wait, there she goes. We should all take 5. Anyway, moving on. I think that when you talk about what kind of ethicist you are, you know, like, I am more of a virtue ethicist, which basically puts me in a situation where I don't evaluate right and wrong based on, you know, a set of rules or cultural expectations. I mean, I don't look at a sense of obligation or duty to family tradition or spiritual tradition as a point of my ethics, my virtues. A lot of it comes from, you know, more like admiring, you know, great men and great women from the past and things like that. This is a gross oversimplification, but just basically going into that. Some people are more relationship ethicists, you know, where they're basically, their idea of what is right and wrong depends on, you know, their relationship to the person, you know. So, and a lot of people are relationship ethicists. You'll let your best friend get away with murder, whereas you would not tolerate that from a stranger on the street. That is how a relationship ethicist would work, you know. Or as when, you know, there's a lot more to it. I think that as readers and as people who enjoy getting tarot readings, it's important to pay attention to where, you know, when it comes to ethics, how does that reader operate? I'm not like Avalon in the sense that I won't tell you don't be a cheater. I will basically do the opposite. I will not the opposite. I'll do something else. I'll be like, if you choose to go this course, this is what will happen. I evaluate on a very neutral, very technical, very, you know, just kind of, look, this, if this is going to go, you know, if this is going to work, it's going to work. If it goes down into a million pieces, it's a million pieces. I don't care what you've read online about, you know, twin flames at the solar eclipse in Leo. It's all about what's going on here, you know. And that's the thing. And then sometimes you do enter into those situations where it's all twin flames and lottery tickets, right? And that's where the, you know, you've got to be able to, again, maintain the respect for your space and maintain the respect for the person. Is that what they really want? Or is there, you know, is there some depth that we can bring to this reading besides topics like that, or blockages that could be preoccupations like that?
Yeah, and you know, so you bring up a really good point. So I'm in school for history and anthropology, and in those fields, there's a big emphasis on the fact that as a historian or an anthropologist, you can't bring your own biases and societal norms and cultural norms and apply them to archaic cultures or cultures that are different than yours. And I think it applies the same as a reader. You can't bring your own biases to a, you know, to a reading, because different people have different moral compasses. And I like to explain the tarot as more like a roadmap to the people that I read for. Whereas like, okay, this is what's going on. So in the cheater situation, I'd be like, okay, obviously you're cheating on your wife. Now, if you continue with that, these are the things that will fall into place. If you don't want to continue that, these are the things that will fall into place. If you remain stagnant and do nothing either way, this is what you're looking at. So, you know, I try to keep myself as objective and as out of it as possible. And one more thing, in the chat, they were talking about spreads. And I just want to do this real quick because I've been helping readers this week with different spreads. Like, I don't know how this came about suddenly. But this book, I've had this for years. I love this book. I can't live without it. This is Tarot Spreads by Barbara Moore. And
that's a great book.
Yeah, and it has a spread for everything. And I mean, it's even got in the back like things to empower your readings and how to create your own spreads. And someone was actually looking for a spread for spirit guides, and this has one in there.
You get on Amazon right now. Huh? I'm getting on Amazon right now to get your book. I'm encouraging you.
But it's great. But it also gives you kind of like guidelines on how to start creating your own spreads and things like that. So if you want a spread and you can't find it, you can create it too. So don't get stuck in the, I can't ask this question because I don't have the correct spread. Get creative, make up your own spread, get out a piece of paper and a pen and decide what the boundaries and what the important factors are in the reading that you want to look at, and go from there and play with it and see how it pans out. But yeah, this book, really great. I've used this so much that the binding is coming off, and there are pages that are falling out, but I love this book. Okay, go ahead.
It's a great book. That's a great book. I have my copy of that great book here. It's a very good book. And I think that if you want to get into that arena of designing your own spreads and understanding how cards can actually talk to each other in a scenario, like cards that are side by side, one on top of the other, one that bridges, etc., then it will help you to bring an understanding of the relationship that occurs between cards when they're laid out in front of you, whether or not you are reading freeform or whether or not you're reading in a spread scenario. And so I find that this book is incredibly helpful. I'm a freeform reader. I don't use spreads. I like to leave it open, like really, really open. And usually the story just develops naturally for me. And it's because I understand how those cards, some days I'll feel like, oh no, I want that card to cross there, and I'm gonna, yeah, that one's gonna go up here and that one's gonna go there, and I'm gonna bunch these two, I'm gonna do this, you know. It's not a spread, not everything is designed in that space, but you know, I still have an understanding of how that, you know, how those cards talk to each other. But I did want to address something that both Nico and Allorah said, and that is that you need to be objective within a tarot reading. Absolutely. As a reader, that's one of the things that will actually help you to disassociate yourself so emotively from a situation. And so for me personally, I don't like to be ultra blunt with people, because in a reading situation, I am very, very professional. I'm extremely professional. I talk to you guys here. You're my friends. I'm going to say fuck. I'm going to say go fuck yourself. I'm going to say all the naughty things, right? But when I'm dealing with a reading, with a client and a reading situation, you get an entirely different side of my personality, because I'm 100% committed to giving the best to that person. And for me personally, you know, being objective is a very functional tool. Cultural bridging, I've actually done cultural bridging courses because I've had to live in remote Indigenous communities and I've had to work in that regard. And so I have done professional cultural bridging courses. I've done small psychology modules and things to assist me to become objective, to disassociate myself from the emotive side of that particular reading. I'll accept the emotion as it's coming through to me, yes, but I won't react emotionally to it, despite the fact that I'm very empress. I'm very empress in how I go about things. I'm like, you know, inside I might be going, you naughty little boy. You know, I might be thinking it, I might be feeling it, but I'm going to say, I highly recommend that you address the situation from a different perspective, and you understand that your actions will carry with them, you know, very, very far-reaching consequences, and those consequences might be very difficult for you to deal with in future. And so I think that you should sit with this for a period of time and decide exactly which direction you truly want to go in, and really check in with yourself and understand that, you know, there's a lot at stake here. And that is what I would say to that person. That is what I would say to that individual, you know, who was doing the naughty thing. And I would say an equally eloquent something to, you know, to every client in every situation. And sometimes that might be a little happy something, sometimes that might be a little sad something, but at the end of the day, it needs to be delivered with a sense of detachment as well, so that you're not involving yourself, you're not bleeding heart, you're not crying when you're doing the reading for the refugee. If you're sitting there going, like, that is not functional. Involving your emotions in that situation is not functional. The tarot is the full spectrum of human experience. That's enough emotion. That's enough emotion right there. You don't need to be emotional. The tarot already is emotional. Nico's going like this.
Well, I mean, you basically started answering a question that I actually had sent through the Twitter, because I asked some people, you know, earlier this week when I was like, look, this is going to be going on. You know, if you're a reader, if you're new, intermediate, advanced, doesn't matter. What, you know, are some troubles that you have? And somebody did ask, well, how would you respond? You know, what is your advice for somebody? You know, do you think a person who let's say, the way she says it, she says, do you think it's okay for a person to end a reading who's feeling triggered in that reading by the subject they're looking at, essentially? You know, if they're feeling triggered by it, what do you do? Do you end the reading? Do you say, I'm not qualified for this? How do you get through a reading when you are being triggered by the subject matter brought up in the reading? So, and thank you very much for writing in. I'll go last.
Ah, okay. Oh, well, how about Allorah goes then?
Sorry, I was trying to answer a question. What are we doing? Somebody explain to me.
Well, you're blowing off our eardrums. But basically, I was like, no. There's well, Avalon made a wonderful, wonderful statement about, you know, how to basically, you know, not only stay objective, calm and objective, but also stay, you know, culturally sensitive and essentially emotionally available yet neutral during a session, so that you are not in a situation where you are perhaps overtaking the reading, you know, overwhelming it with your own emotions. You know, sometimes we can, you know, again, there are even situations where things get emotional, or in the case of this person, I paraphrased it because she did write a fair amount. She's concerned about what do you do in a situation where you're doing a reading on a subject and you're feeling triggered, not by the person, but by the subject you are reading. How do you make it, you know, how do you get through it? And, you know, when you think about it, if you're getting emotional in a reading, whether it's because you're sympathizing for the person, empathizing with the person, or you're getting triggered, you walk a fine line between making it about you and making it about them. Is it okay to end the session, or is it professional, which, by the way, you decide what's professional in your own business, but, you know, is it, you know, you're the boss, remember, you're the boss, unless you're working for a network or something, which, you know, none of us work for networks, but, you know, some people do. You know, some people do. I don't, you don't. But, you know, we're the bosses of our own thing, so we decide what's professional for us. But, you know, I was just saying, I'll go last. Like, I read the question, so I get to go last. So what would you do in a given circumstance like that?
Okay, so if I, you know, this is a practice thing, I feel like. I feel like you get better at recognizing when you're getting too involved in a reading that isn't yours. You become better at recognizing it immediately versus, because when I first started reading, not when I was younger, but as an adult, when I first started reading for other people, I had those moments where my own emotions would become involved in another person's reading, and it would kind of seep into the reading, and I wouldn't realize it until I was like, oh, wait. And then I would have to reel it back in. And I think as time has gone on and I've read for more and more people and I've had more years experience, now I am very good at recognizing, okay, this is a situation where my emotions can immediately come into play. I understand my shadows in this area, my own. I think you really have to know your own self and know how you deal with your own triggers to not get your own emotions involved. And being an empath, it's not easy to do that necessarily, because that's like when I first learned about my empathy and that I was in, you know, a highly sensitive person. One of the first things that I had to learn was how to distinguish between my energy and other people's energy, because I had no sense of that. And so I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of, I couldn't be around a lot of people for long amounts of times and things like that. And I thought that I was just fucking crazy and that I was an emotional wreck all the time. And then when I realized, no, this is actually a thing, like, oh, holy shit, this is a thing. I spent a lot of time trying to really hone in on how to depict, okay, that's not my feelings. That's so-and-so's feelings, or so-and-so over there. And so for me, it's just become a thing of practice and being able to recognize what's mine, what's not mine, and where to draw that line, if that makes sense. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, it does. For me, I think that understanding my own personal processes to the degree that I do, I'm not an expert in myself. I'm still trying, and I probably will die still not being an expert in this. This is a lot. But what I would like to say is that in that situation where I'm feeling that exchange and things can be a little bit like, it can get a little bit full on in a reading, then I like to take a moment. I like to take a bit of space. And I think that it's perfectly okay as a reader to say, okay, I've understood what you've just said. Just give me a moment and I just allow myself the opportunity to feel the situation as best as I can, and to also ground that situation. That might be, 3 minutes of silence in a reading, and that's okay to have 3 minutes of silence in a reading. I'm not charging that person 3 minutes of silence for that reading. If we've got an hour session booked, then it's 63 minutes in that case, but I'll still take that space, and I'll allow myself to just calm down and to make sure that my emotions aren't being riled up as a result of that. And if I do feel like they are being riled up, then I will excuse myself. I'll excuse myself and just say, I'm just going to go and get a glass of water, and then I'll go and have a glass of water, and I'll chill the fuck out for a bit, and then I'll come back, so that I'm always presenting the best version of myself. But I'll ask for a little bit of space in that situation, and I think it's perfectly fine to just steady your emotions. If you feel like you're in the moment and things are starting to overwhelm you, it's okay to ask for a little bit of space. You're in space already. You're in very safe space in a tarot reading. If the tarot read is quite good, then you're in quite good space, and it's okay to just take a moment within that temple, that tarot temple that you've created, and just take a beat and understand that to disassociate yourself right at this exact moment is incredibly important. Not to take on board the emotions, not to react emotionally in this particular situation, no matter how abhorrent you might feel that the situation is, but that sometimes you just need to take a really deep fucking breath and calm down and then proceed. So it's you're taking a moment to essentially collect yourself, and it's perfectly fine to do so, because you're going to be able to then proceed with that reading, still as grounded and centered as you were at the start, and projecting a sense of professionalism. And you'd be hard pressed to find a professional in various different modalities or industries that doesn't just take a moment to pause. Like my boss my old boss, he's a financial advisor. He's a stockbroker, and he did like billion-dollar clients. And I saw his exchanges because I would take minutes and I would take notes, and his exchange was always something that I aspire to. So in a situation where they're talking millions of dollars, and there's a lot of heat essentially in that room, he would just go, I'm just going to sit with this for a moment. And he would just sit back, and he would take a little sip from his tea, and he'd be looking out, and you could see that he was visualizing something, he was processing something, and then he would come back and present the best version of himself, because he had actually taken that time to ground, to really think about the circumstances developing in the situation. And then, he had the clarity of mind to then, proceed after considerable amounts of thinking. I mean, even in that small space of time. So I think that allowing yourself some space in a reading is good.
Belinda, am I allowed to say your name? Oh, let me check. Okay, you didn't ask for anonymity. Okay, good. Okay, I was like, whoops. Belinda, I think, sorry. I think that in a situation, comedic relief for a serious topic. I think that the situation that the first thing I would recommend, first, I completely agree with Avalon. 2 minutes can do wonders. As readers, we're constantly self-conscious about dead air in a reading, and so we're kind of worried about, oh my God, if I take even 30 seconds to hold on, to a thought for myself to process something, is that other person thinking that I'm just, stalling for time or hedging my bets or something, silly or crazy or stupid like that. You can take a breath in that moment. If you find yourself in a situation where you are feeling triggered, maybe not necessarily triggered by the other person, but maybe you identify or you over-identify with the situation, with the person that you're doing a reading for. You over-identify like, oh my God, I got passed over too, or I got sacked last year too, or my first husband did this, or my mother did that, or whatever, and you just go and go. Take yourself out of their shoes. It's the last thing you think about doing when you're trying to do a compassionate reading. When you're trying to do a compassionate reading, the first thing you want to do is get in their shoes. Take yourself out of their shoes, because you run the risk of doing a lot of things that I've seen a lot of people do when they make mistakes, is they give all of their past coping mechanisms instead of doing a reading. All of a sudden it's like, well, this is what you've got to do. This is what helped me get through this and all this kind of thing. It's okay every once in a while if you want to reference, like a friend or a family member that that went through something special, just to kind of, clear the air, get the tension out of the way, because Usually when people are going through a situation like that, they think they're the only ones and they're a freak for having it happen to them. So if you could be like, no, you're not the only person in the world to get divorced. You're not the only person in the world to get passed over. You're not the only, that's fine. Fabulous. But if you are feeling like you have lost yourself in the situation, you know, when you're getting triggered, that means you're about to relive something. Take yourself out of their shoes. Don't over-identify with them. Don't over-identify with anyone, but don't over-identify in that situation, or else you're not going to give them a good reading. All of a sudden, you're going to be giving them your experience or telling them what you're telling yourself to do when you're getting triggered. You're like treating both of you at the same time. Never a good idea. You know, it's like the doctor doing heart surgery and all of a sudden saying, you know, I've always meant to get this taken care of. You know, it's just like, you know, just deciding to do it on themselves at the same time. We can't do that. I think that if you're starting to feel a trigger, you know, again, take yourself out of the other person's shoes. You know, again, you may think that you've had the same experiences. You may think you've had all, you know, you've got so much in common. There's a reason this person came to you. You'll cry together. You'll hold each other. You know, you're two. You're all in the same boat together. No, you're not in the same boat. Get out of the same boat. That's their life. That's their experience. This is your life. This is your experience. And as soon as you entangle these two, you're both going to get messed up. So I would say you don't have to stop doing the reading, but find a way to take yourself out of that person's shoes. And if you feel like you're losing control, yeah, excuse yourself for a minute or two, ground, center, cleanse, and clear. If you know, you can even make it a part of the reading and be like, okay, well, I feel like we're going into a sensitive place, which we are. You know, I'm going to light some incense, or maybe you're on the phone or something. Look, we're just going to do some rhythmic breathing for 30 seconds just to kind of, you know, and you don't, I mean, for just, they'll understand. You can just be like, look, the energy is getting really thick in here. I think we should clear the energy, just clear the room for a sec before we proceed. You know, and as long as it is procedural, nobody's going to take offense to that. And you can continue.
Yeah, I like that. Everything that you said, everything like that and that. Put those two responses together and all of it. It's just such good, yummy stuff. Oh, I tell you what, guys, I'm loving this chat. I really am. And I'm looking at the content in the chat stream. Are you guys seeing this awesome conversation that's going on here? I cannot keep up with this conversation. You guys watching right now and everyone who has tuned in have been 100% amazing. You have added so much richness. As I've been talking and I've muted my mic, I've been reading, you know, the to and from. Every time I type in, though, I lose my video screen, so I'm not typing in too often. But it's amazing stuff. And I think that we've reached the point now where we can open up for questions and begin to wrap up our hangout, because it is getting quite late on your side. My children have just come home, so I think that we should get to some questions. And now, Nico, I know that you've got some questions from Twitter, and I would like to ask those who are watching at this very moment in time that if you do have a question, could you please put it in capital letters so that we can differentiate your question from, you know, conversation that's going backwards and forwards between viewers at the moment. So if you do have any of those questions, then pop them down right now, and we'll start with some of Nico's. We'll continue on, sorry, with some of Nico's Twitter questions.
You got to unmute your mic.
I was saying thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's okay, moving on. Let's catch up. Let's move on. Okay. This one, okay, so this one actually comes directly to Avalon from Cindy. Everything else is kind of, you know, it's you know, the free for all, but this one's to Avalon from Cindy on Twitter. And she asks, love you, Avalon. Well, she says, love you, Avalon. And she says, have you ever had, you mentioned this before too. Have you ever had to deal with spiritual interference or butting in a reading? Should a person always be open or always be closed to that in a reading? How do we know when, how do we know when to authenticate if this is good intel?
I've never actually had the experience of having like any sort of wayward, nasty spirit come in and whisper something foreboding in my ear, or trickster kind of energy. I've never actually experienced that, but you know, I grew up in Yoruba, and spiritism is my craft, and so I'm actually very, very good at what I do because I've had very, very good role models at what I do. And from a very young age, I have had initiations, trials, rites of passages, specifically to make sure that when I am in a situation where I'm open to spirit, that I know exactly who I'm talking to. Know your demons, know your guides, know your gods, know your deity, know them from feeling. And you know that because you work with them regularly. I don't call in anyone that I don't know. I have my Orisha. I have Emanja sitting here on my table right now, Odoya Emanja, and I have Yansan in the back there. So Epahe Yansan. And so I'm very accustomed to working with that particular kind of spirit energy, and I don't call in any space. Now, if you know things about deity, and I'm just going to give you a little something, Yansan, who sits behind me here, she is positioned there to watch my back. And what she does is she's the Hodaderaji Egun. So she basically takes the wayward spirits and makes sure that they don't do anything nasty. Like, she really leads them to and from the cemetery gates. She holds space in that way to make sure that they're not becoming unruly. And so she's the carregadora. So she carries the egun. She carries that egun energy. And that's something that, as a daughter of Yansan, I had to learn to work with. And so doing that meant that I had to really acknowledge and understand the difference in spirit energy. And I did some really grueling rites of passage. I'm talking like starvation, laying down flat for 9 days without actually lifting my head or my neck. Like, I've done rites of passage for this. And so I can't tell you how it is for anybody else. I just know that I've done the work, guys. I've done the serious work, the non-glamorous, the sacrifice of animals kind of work to reach the point that I am today. And I haven't even done a quarter of what I'm supposed to do to be a spiritista or a macumbera. So I just know that I know what I know at this stage in time, and I know that it's very important to understand what energies you're working with and to never call in an energy that is not that you're not comfortable working with. Now, if you are in a situation where somebody does come through, or an energy or an entity does come through, and you are suspect, then you cut that off. You are cut that off. Your reaction in your body will tell you what is legitimate and what is not. Don't respond with fear. Respond with awareness, and understand that fear will sometimes taint the experience, but awareness will allow you to understand what is good and what is bad, or what is right and what is wrong, and the balance in that particular situation. So that's the best that I can do. Sorry, guys. No, that's not a great answer.
No, that's pretty damn good. I honestly, yeah. I mean, there's a reason she directed it at you. I mean, you are the spiritism is definitely your thing. I mean, at least in my, speaking for myself, any kind of spiritism that happens is purely incidental. I have had instances where an attachment to a person I've been doing a reading for has, actually like accosted me in the middle of a reading. Or stayed in the house, whether it's a spiritual attachment, a thought form, something, whether it was a parasite or something that thought it was protecting the person I was doing the reading for. This person was, I even have clients that, I know when they're writing emails to me, because I'll feel like, oh, there's that horrible creature again. Oh, she must be emailing me again. And it's true. It is. And then it is that person, I think learning how to identify where it comes from can help you kind of control it. I don't open up to spirits unless we're asking about somebody who's passed on, though, for the most part. I will ask my guides, my deities for help, but for the most part, I don't commune to get that information. So, that's why I'm kind of like, this is for Avalon, because it's always purely incidental with me. Allorah, what were you going to say?
Oh, I didn't have anything to add on this question, but Embrace the Moon, she has been trying to ask a question like the whole chat. So I told her, I was like, we will get to your question, because I've seen it like 3 or 4 times. But she was asking, what do you do if you already know that they won't take the message before you're done shuffling? So this is where my preamble of readings comes in, because there are things that I explain when I first sit down with someone. And one of the things that I explain is tarot is a map of choices and options and a guide. The way that I read tarot is not fortune telling style. The cards, and I also say that the cards will change, the minor cards will change with a client's decision. So if they don't listen, then, and you already know that when you're shuffling, if you give them this, you know, explanation like, hey, this is what tarot is, this is how it works. And for me, I'm just saying for me, how I view tarot and how I explain it. Now, when it comes to the major cards that come up in a reading, if they choose not to listen, that's their bad, because 9 times out of 10 or 9.5 times out of 10, whenever majors come up, those are karmic things and lessons and people and energies that whoever's asking the question really needs to pay attention to, because it's a huge road sign like, hey, you need to pay attention to this. And if you already know that they're not going to listen, that's on them. I mean, all you can do is lay out the options and say, this is what we're dealing with. What you do with it, that's on you. I don't think that I would ever stop giving a reading if I felt like they wouldn't listen, simply because when you get a feeling like that about somebody that you're reading, that may be true in the moment, that they're not going to get the message, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't go into their subconscious and they don't go and reflect on it later, or it doesn't come up later for them, or they don't ponder on it when, you know, in a quiet moment in their vehicle, or when they're getting ready in the morning or something like that. Because a lot of times, people that are hard-headed like I am, I need to hear it anyways, and it will come up later in ways that strike me out of the blue, and I'm not even thinking about a reading that I got or anything related to questions that I have, but I get signs all the time. And so let's just say there was a question that I had and I got a reading, and at the time I was non-receptive to what the reader had to say. And then later I get a sign of, let's say the death card came up in a reading, and later that day I get a sign of 2 ravens or vultures eating a dead carcass on the side of the road. And for some reason that sticks out to me. And then I start thinking, oh, wait a minute, in that reading I had the death card. Now I'm seeing this. Okay, there are patterns here. And even though, you know, I practice my craft and I am intuitive, it just because I do that doesn't mean that someone who doesn't wouldn't pick up on patterns in their own lives. Because I certainly think that we do anyways. I mean, I think it's a psychological thing. I think it's an anthropological thing in societies, the way that we notice patterns and things in our own belief systems. So that is my answer to that question. Do you guys have anything to add?
Nope.
I don't. If you know somebody's not going to take the information, I guess my question is, why would you take it personally? I guess is my question. You know, it's like, I mean, it's an opportunity for a reader to learn. I think as soon as you cut your teeth for long enough on this kind of thing, it's sort of, I know that sometimes people come to readings and energy healings and things because they're also working on themselves at the same time they're working on other people. So it can be demoralizing to not have the affirmation and confirmation come from somebody taking the advice, or, you know, or maybe even giving the value to what you're putting out there. Might be a mistrial with us 3, because that's not why we did it, but you know, that's not why we got started. But I think that my thought is, if somebody chooses not to listen, my ego should not be invested in being right. Oh, and it should not be invested in being the moral superior in this situation. My investment is in helping this person and being correct in my reading when I'm doing, because I actually do fortune telling. So, you know, being correct in what is coming out and what the prediction is and helping the strategy along. If I know that somebody's not going to do it, well, I've given advice to lots of people who do things that I don't necessarily agree with, or they ask for advice and it's just a waste of time because they just don't make any changes at all. Again, it's not about me. I'm the guy holding the cards are the star of the show. The astrology is the star of the show. They just need somebody to hold them up. You know, it's not about me. It's not the NICO show. It's not about that. So I wouldn't take it personally, and neither should you.
I agree.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think it's a perfect opportunity to get someone's attention. If you know that they're not going to accept the information being presented, and you have that feeling, then you can change your style. You can change the way that you're going to deliver that message in that moment in accordance with that feeling, that intuitive hit that you're getting, and you can adapt. We spoke earlier on about adaptability with clients and in different reading situations. That's a perfect example of when to adapt your style to fit that particular client, and that's exactly what you have to do. Like, you have to adapt your style to fit specific clients, because everyone comes with a different personality and a different quirk and a different language, essentially. So that's something that's really important to consider. Do we have any more questions?
Oh yes, we've got I've got 2 more from Twitter. The only reason I'm just, hold on, quick shout out. Martin, Sarah, I'm not answering you guys' questions just because, those were both about, we talked about those pretty much the whole time, so I'm sure you got sufficient answers, but shout out to Martin and Sarah. Thank you for writing your questions. Sarah asked, about ethics and basically, how do you handle a negative, blah, 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 blah. And Martin asked about, do we believe some people resonate with us and are meant for us versus others? We did touch on that as well. So shout out to Martin and Sarah. Thank you for writing in. But I really wanted to do this one because this is a head scratcher, and I think all 3 of us are going to really enjoy chewing on this. So Eucalyptus Moon sends in, I have a hard question. I have seen many readers in the last 2 years, and they all said the same thing, but it never happens for me. It's uncanny how they all pick up on the same things and predictions in spite of not knowing one another. So I know that they're getting something, but why isn't anything happening? That's as far as it went. So let's see. Avalon, your turn. We're gonna go around in a circle. We did the round. It went me and then.
Okay. In that case, I'm going to say that potentially the discrepancy in that situation is you, the person, and how you're interpreting the information that you've been given. And so, fair enough, if a reader has said you are going to buy a red car on the 7th of January at 5 o'clock, and you haven't bought a red car on the 7th of January at 5 o'clock, then there's no way that discrepancy could be you. That's just inaccuracy of information. But what you're talking about here is an uncanny alliance, a synchronicity in messages between readers who don't know each other, and still you are there not experiencing the situations and the messages essentially that they're outlining. And that is, for me, that would be a solid indicator of there being somewhat of a lack. There might be a snippet of information that could be missing for you to really make the connection with that message a tangible one, or it could be that you're looking at it from a different perspective. It could be very much an 8 of Swords situation, in which case you need to change the perspective and not listen so much about, not necessarily listen to what exactly they're saying, but how you are interpreting what they are saying. And if you're interpreting it in a particular way, and that particular way isn't coming to fruition for you, you're not seeing the results of that interpretation, then it's time to change directive, to change perspective. And also there could be that simple situation of you just needing to do a little bit more work, in which case your reader should have been, not should have, but your reader could have gently, nudged you in a particular direction, particularly if you had gone to one reader about one question and then another reader. Do these readers know that you've actually gone to 2 readers? Because that technically is comparing reading styles right there. And if you're comparing reading styles, then that isn't necessarily the healthiest way to get the best answer for you personally. But listening to what the reader is saying, and in this case, listening to what both readers are saying, and then understanding that there is a discrepancy in the what is the word that I'm looking for? In the understanding of that particular message. You know, I know that, like I was talking about cross-cultural bridging before, and language, cross-culturally speaking, and this can change between state and state, like certain nuances in language can actually change the way a person perceives. You know, it could be very much a discrepancy in how you're viewing, listening to, or perceiving the medicine of that message, in which case I highly recommend that you adjust your perspective and look at what you're not paying attention to at this moment in time. If you're looking specifically for something at this moment in time, specifically at something, then, you know, it's time to widen the scope and to understand that you might be looking for the incorrect speck of sand in the sea of sand, if you know what I mean. But that's a stumper. That is something that's, I've not really heard of a person having 2 readings with 2 different clients, with 2 different readers, and then having the same exact message come through, in which case, if that's happening, I just have to lock in that there's a discrepancy with you, the sitter, the person who is receiving that message. There's something that you're not acknowledging, you're not accessing, and that you're not perceiving in this moment. This is not to say that you have a problem. It just means that you need to adjust your perspective. And that's something that we all have to do from time to time, is adjust our perspective and also our expectations. So.
Okay, I have a question. On that question that was asked, she wants to know why nothing's happening, as in why it keeps coming up the same. Is that basically the understanding?
This is all I have in the message. I did kind of type back, like I had the same question as you. She hasn't responded to that tweet, to the tweet. Well, it's not a tweet, it's a direct message, you know, DM or whatever the hell I call it on Twitter. I don't Twitter convo a lot, so I don't know. But basically, I think that the way I interpret it was basically how Avalon interpreted it. Like, okay, 2 different predictions or 2 different forecasts or 2 different whatevers from 2 different readers who, yeah, are basically, I mean, I don't even know if they're, you know, they're not there. You know, they're not in contact with one another. Don't know what the reading styles are. But they do pick up on some interesting similarities. They do kind of pick up on the same truths. I'm wondering if maybe they even pick up on some things in the present, you know, like that do resonate with her. But it doesn't, why doesn't anything happen? I'm saying, why doesn't it come true? So yeah, in a predictive situation, maybe they're saying, okay, look, yes, this is going to manifest this way. This is going to change. This is what's going to alter. This is what's happening there. And maybe it just kind of stays stuck. It's almost stuck. So that's all you got, girl. So I'll go after you, but you go first.
Yeah, no, like I've said like probably a million times in this broadcast, that's why I always explain these cards can change. If you do nothing, they will not change. So I feel like, I don't know if this was explained to her or if she's looking at it as a, yeah, I think you have to look at it from that kind of angle. Like, and this is the same with a person that comes back to you, like asks you a question and then comes back to you like the next day with the same question. And you're like, first of all, you've had 24 hours. And second of all, have you done anything to make the cards read differently? Because a lot of times if somebody asks the same question within a few days or even a week, it will come up very similar because not a lot of change has occurred since the last reading. So that's another thing that I would say to look at is what changes have you made in relation to the readings that you received that would make the cards change.
And I'm with you on that one. I make it a point of, you know, being very clear with some people, you know, and we've all had those situations. And I think that when you offer smaller readings, you know, like 10-minute things, little essays, you know, things like that, sometimes it's easy for a person to get a little carried away and maybe, you know, order the same thing in succession too rapidly because, you know, it's smaller, it's just a little thing. I always tell people don't check in because, like I said, you're just paving another road onto the crossroads that we just put you at. So now you're just going to get lost in this potentiality. In case of Eucalyptus Moon, I would say that if they're picking up on something, I'm going to have to say with Avalon, it does feel like there is something being left out here. All right. Now, I'm sorry to say that. I'm not trying to do the blame the victim thing. I don't think anyone's a victim here, but I do think now, if they're both saying it, the good news is it's still hanging out there and it's going to be there for you. Okay. So it's that situation's still out there in ethers for you. So yay. But I do feel that your difficulty here, whatever the nature of the question is, you know, there's a prerequisite that you're not fulfilling to set this in motion that you must. And usually with tarot, you know, and even with astrology, there is a domino effect. One thing has to go to get the ball rolling. Now, if you're not doing that, if you're asking, you know, if this is a love question and you're asking for somebody to, you know, to get into a relationship with, and say both readers say, oh, you're both going to meet somebody, you know, at a work function. But you're the type of person who never goes out with anyone at work. You never go out with anyone afterwards. You go home and you do the proud introvert thing. That might be hard to do. There's nothing wrong with being an introvert, by the way. You know, but it's just kind of saying sometimes the reading will challenge you to go outside of what you do. And you might not be wanting to make that challenge. If it's a work situation, it's like, oh, I'm supposed to get a job. Okay. And then, you know, again, I think readers should also give you ways to make things happen. You know, like, okay, how do I implement this or prevent this, however you want it to go? So, you know, if there's no, that's why I always tell myself, everyone, I'm like, I'm in the war room. I'm the war room. I'll give you strategies. If it's saying make yourself available and put yourself out there and it's not your nature to do so, you are delaying something good for yourself. If you are the type of person who never follows up on a job resume or a job application that you file, and, you know, a fortnight goes by and you're wondering why nobody has processed your application, you waited too long to call in. You know, so we're not getting the ball rolling. Okay? If somebody breaks into your house and says they want to marry you, you need to call the police. So don't wait for that to happen. You know, or shoot them. You know, it's the American way. But you know, it's sort of whatever you've got to do. You know, you don't wait for those things to happen. The universe doesn't do that. And if the universe feels it needs to drag you out of your house to make something change, it's usually with a negative thing, not a positive thing. So, you know, it sounds to me like the situation is there's a prerequisite that goes unfilled. So maybe you should ask somebody, what is the prerequisite that I need to fill in order to, you know, set this plan in motion? Because it seems like there's a step that needs to be examined here. There's you know, you're looking at step 3 and you're on step 1 and nobody's spoken a thing about 2. That's all I got to say.
I like what you just said there, Nico, and it just made me think of something, right? And that is that, you know, when you have a tarot reading done, of course, you're provided with, as Allorah has said, a roadmap in which to, you know, carve your path out and achieve your objective. Let's just use those terms for the right now. But you do have to action something. You know, you don't walk out of a tarot reading with a passive attitude. You walk out of a room with an action plan. You know, and it's the same thing when you're casting a spell. When you're casting a spell, you don't, you know, do a candle spell and burn your petition and then sit back and go, the money will come to me, and just sit there and watch TV and eat cereal in your pajamas, because that's not going to bring the money to you. You're still going to have to work in accordance with the energy. So you're casting for a job, you're casting for money, you're casting for a lover. You work in that direction. Like, you're generating the burst of energy, and then you're following that burst, cementing, hammering in the intention as it's blazing forward. And then eventually you meet with the outcome, right? And it's the same thing with a tarot reading. Once it's been unleashed, once a tarot reading, the message of a tarot reading, the narrative of a tarot reading has been unleashed, you need to follow the trail and be prepared with a hammer to make sure that you're hammering in the intentions in an active capacity, so that you are manifesting, you're assisting to manifest what has already been laid out for you. And if 2 tarot readers have put that out there, then Nico is absolutely right. It's hanging in the ethers, just waiting for someone to actualize it.
I mean, I think that's it. It's you know, and I don't believe that everything is set in stone, but I do believe that fate is a tide, if that makes sense. You know, and that's just something I've also learned working with astrology. Certain tides are stronger, certain tides are weaker. That's why we have terms like major and minor arcana. The minor arcana, as Allorah mentioned earlier, will change often depending on the actions you make. Some require more effort than others. you know, some tides are stronger, you know, so when we look at the tides in terms of court cards or, you know, or tarot cards, the High Priestess, the trump, trumps the Queen of Swords. They have a lot in common energetically, but you're just going to have a harder time pushing the High Priestess aside. And I think that when you're in a situation that where two readers are kind of pulling out the same thing, that means that's a real strong tide. You're just not getting in the water. Again, I mean, and if you're not even on the beach, okay, you need to get in the car. You know, that's that because it seems to me like, yeah, if you do the wishing, waiting, and hoping thing, you know, it's like taking a canoe on the motorway. You're not doing all you can to bring yourself to a better place. And I'm not saying, again, it's not blame the victim. I would even ask, sometimes readers are really cool about this. You can just say, like, look, I want to know how to implement this. What is the blockage here? If it's as simple as, look, you filed an application for a job and you did not follow up on it, okay, lesson learned, to do it again next time. If you're supposed to, you know, if you're going to me, an astrologer, I'll say, look, your window of opportunity for finding a lover is between X and Y dates because this is what's going on in this house of love and romance. If you decide to not take advantage of that window, of that tide of energy, and you just wait it out the whole time, yeah, and that's all I can say. You know, it's sort of like it's not going to make it easier. So that's where you have to kind of go, oh, where am I being challenged? Oh, I have to go out and meet somebody, or at least make an OkCupid account. Okay. You know, so there's a certain amount of initiative that needs to be sufficient enough to get these things going. But I feel like we've kind of grilled you enough, and I still want to say that is a beautiful and wonderful question because, you know what, we do have a fairly large audience today, and I think that a lot of people, readers, would feel empowered to know you can say that out loud. And I think a lot of people who enjoy getting readings, you know, could use the affirmation as well. So thank you, Eucalyptus Moon, for writing in. Okay. Now I do have, yeah. And so I do got one more, if that was all right, that I wanted to look at here really quick here.
And while you're doing that, I'm just gonna shuffle my deck because I do want to pull a card because Beltane and Samhain are coming up for. Yay! I know. So they're different veils that are thinning, different energies for northern, southern hemisphere. So, but anyways, I'll be shuffling and I'll pull a card while you're reading.
Okay. So, last question. Morgan asks, this is from the NICO Twitter. I'm not keeping an eye on the YouTube chat. I have no idea what's going on there. So if you guys were interested in that, you know, that's but as far as Morgan is concerned, Nico, you gave me a reading a while back. It was good, spot on. Yeah, thank you. And I was wondering about when you, sorry, I'm feeling crunched for time. No, but thank you, Morgan. I appreciate the feedback. All right, so I was wondering about when you said this is an astrology question versus a tarot question. How do you know? And to open it up for the ladies, how do they know when something is an oracle question versus a tarot question, or if they use astrology as well? How do they know when to switch it back and forth? So I'll go first on this one because for me, it's just a familiarity, you know, about knowing how certain questions are phrased, knowing how, you know, what certain tools are good for. I don't trust astrology to get inside somebody's head. You know, if we're trying to learn somebody's intentions and their feelings, you don't want to go with astrology stereotypes. You don't want to be like, well, they're not acting like a Mars in Pisces. So, you know, you want to make sure, you know, I like tarot because it can also, what can change at a moment's notice. You know, if it's something that does happen, we're putting people under a microscope, we're getting away from profiling, that's better. I like astrology better for timing, for obvious reasons. You know, because you know, it's so I tend to use both. So when people are asking things like, okay, well, you know, when is a good time for me to file my H-1 visa application, or when do you think, you know, do you think, am I going to say find a new house this year? When's a good time to buy a house, or something like that? That's, now we're going into astrology territory. I very, very, very seldom use oracle in my one-on-one readings, only because I find that astrology is my oracle in a lot of ways. you know, because I can look at the moral of the story and I can be like, okay, well, we just had Venus retrograde. And yeah, that was, for a lot of people, it was just a freaking train wreck from March 4th up until the 15th of April. And so, you know, I would be like, okay, there is a moral of the story. You know, there is your oracle card. You know, what do we learn about Venus when she's retrograde? What is everyone going through? We're learning lessons about, you know, instant gratification, trust issues, abandonment issues, you know, all of those things. So we're learning how to cope, how to heal with those things, not live for that. You know, don't treat feelings as facts and all of those kinds of things. So that's what I would say. And here, let me do one thing here. So, okay, hold on. Oh, okay, so sorry about the long-windedness. So anyway, the question is, again, how do you know when something is a tarot question versus an astrology question versus an oracle question? Sorry for blathering on and on, guys. That's my thing. Thank you, Morgan. Talk to you again. Talk to you soon. All right, whichever one of you chicks wants to go next.
All right. I'll go. I waited a millisecond and I'm like, Allorah. I don't exclusively use Oracle. I like to pull Oracle to just determine the room, the nature of the situation, or to give a warm hug. I use Oracle as the little sugar, the little sprinkling at the end of a tarot reading. But to determine between the two, I have to feel it in the question. There are certain questions that just I feel very spiritual and very open, in which case an oracle, if you know Oracle, they can have several messages or several meanings, actually keywords stamped on an oracle card, or they can be something very broad. Take, for instance, this is from the Sacred Rebels Oracle. Trust yourself. It's very ambiguous. And if there's someone coming to you with this very open spiritual question of which there is no intricacy or details given, then they deserve a trust yourself. They deserve a card like this, you know? They deserve that. And I'm not going to get my tarot deck out and work with these beautiful trump cards and the amazing court cards and the plethora of minor arcana to pick up the intricacies of a situation if you're not going to come to the party and tell me a little bit more about that. So I'm just going to hit it with some oracle, and I'm going to give that's the respect. That's a respect thing for me, you know? And at the end of a reading, I will absolutely... I'll open up. This is how I do it. I personally open up with soul cards, which are standalone for me. They're not oracle. They're not tarot. They're soul cards. And then I will. The meat and the sandwich is the tarot, and then you know, the end result, the little dash, the little sprinkle of something that comes from oracle, and that usually. I do that to open up to positive messages from spirit at the end of a reading, or not necessarily positive, but you know, functional messages from spirit at the end of a reading. And they are messages like, you do need to trust yourself a little bit more, in keeping with all the detail that tarot has already provided. It just cements this, like, you know it, and you have to trust yourself a bit more, or feel free from judgment, free to love. You know, it's a very open statement that can be applied, you know, very liberally. And so it just sort of, yeah, it's like a little warm hug, a little sugar, a little spiritual something, a little bit of like the message inside a fortune cookie at the end of your meal. Like, it's a little bit of that. You know, so that's personally how I would do it, but I don't specifically use oracle. Like I can, it's not to say that I can't. I'd read with the Oracle of Echoes by Anna Turian. I could do a full-blown reading with no other cards, and that is such a well-balanced oracle deck. It's got this dark and light thing, the marriage of dark and light happening perfectly within the entire deck, and that's a very well-balanced oracle, in which case I would not hesitate to use that. And that would still give me an equally powerful reading. But there are various oracle decks, as we do know, that are very just on the lighter side of things, and I don't think that they provide the depth that sometimes is necessary to give a well-rounded and holistic type of reading. So,
well, yeah, I mean, it could be a little irresponsible even to kind of go straight to oracle. I mean, we go back to what we talked about before with the cheating partner. You know, if you pull an oracle card that says go out and play for him or her, it's kind of, well, it's just funny, you know. The happy unicorns say, go out and play. Fuck your husband, go out and play. You know, like, I mean, maybe. I mean, again, I go from more like I take a virtue ethicist standpoint where I'm kind of like, are you cool with you right now? Is this what you would model yourself? Are you embodying what you would consider to be model behavior? You know, if you are, go for it. You know, it's kind of like if people, you know, people ask, oh, do you do black magic? Do you do baleful magic? I'm like, if you feel you are embodying model behavior, I'm not going to try to change you. If we butt heads, we will butt heads. But I'm not going to go and preach to you as long, you know, but again, do you feel like you're embodying model behavior? And also, are you doing no collateral damage? Clearly in this situation, they would be. But, you know, it's sort of a question, right? You know, but yeah, if somebody's like cheating on their spouse and you get the happy unicorns go out and play, that's where that's where my brain goes with that. You know, it's like go out and play, or somebody's coping with addictions and it says treat yourself. It's like you gotta maybe think about it. You know.
Well,
Yes. Yes. Irresponsibility is the perfect.
Yeah, you know, and when she's losing it. When it comes to though Oracle and Tarot and all of that, like, and mixing them and deciding what's what, I actually, so I will mix Oracle and Tarot, but typically, so ever since I got the decks, I've done this and it works beautifully, and it's more, so it's for them, but it's more for me, because it helps me. It helps me understand what energies the person is pulling in at the time. And so I use the Gods and Titans, Goddesses and Sirens decks, both of those. I have them pick a card from each. So I have a feminine and a masculine aspect that are working with the reading. And so I leave them out. And so that kind of helps me along, just with, and that's also like helping me read the room, so to speak, because if I, for instance, this is a good example. I read for somebody the other day who drew, and I am shitting you not, like this has never happened to me before when I've done this Oracle draw and then a tarot reading, but he pulled, which is the god of the sun and power. And then in the feminine form, he pulled, how do you say your Orisha's name? You say it better than I do. Your mic. Turn your mic on.
Sorry. Iansa or Emanja?
Yeah, the second one.
Ah, yes. Emanja. Also known as Yemanya. But
Yemanja. So both of those cards came up and they both had power underneath of them in the deck. And so I was like, holy shit, like, what does this mean? But they both meant power in very different ways. One was about like more self-empowerment and one was about harnessing power that he already had. And so when the reading came up, the reading was all about change and transformation and being scared to make a change, but it's a difficult change, but you have to go through with it. And so that made me understand, like, okay, that's why these energies are here. So a lot of times, like Avalon, if it was a tough reading and it was a lot of information that was hard to swallow, sometimes I'll pull a warm hug.
That's it. Like that's how sort of I use soul cards. You know how I was saying I use soul cards and then I use tarot and then I do oracle at the end. Soul cards for me sets the tone for the reading. So sure enough, I'll be addressing a question, but soul cards is very, very good at working intuitively. And I happen to love that deck because it just opens things right up for me. And so it will give me like a symbolism or a thought to, it will enhance it. And then I'll find that every single card relates back to that initial thought, that initial, little insight that I got. And because I was able to set that tone, then I've already opened myself up to that insight, and I find that I can better read the cards. And that way, when I hand that reading over to another person, then they're like, oh, wow, like it was a little bit more intuitive than they were potentially expecting because I took the time to open it up with like a tone setter. But I only do that with soul cards. That is not an oracle deck. That is an amazing magical tool, not to be confused with an oracle deck. Not that there's anything wrong with oracle, which I have any.
See, I love my Forest Fairy Oracle, but it does have that balance of light, dark, and neutral to it as well. you know. So I will.
I'll give you that. I have that deck as well.
Hold on, let me jump in front of the Oracle decks before you throw your fireballs at it. You know, I mean, it's like, wait, no, you back off, lady. But I think that yeah, maybe it's also. I mean, I guess my form of giving a warm hug would be getting somebody excited about the journey, you know, getting excited about the Grail quest of, you know, getting excited about fighting the dragon, getting excited about going on the adventure, because some people just aren't excited about that part, you know. And usually the way I use astrology, you know, I guess you could say astrology is sort of my warm hug in that sense, where it's like some people are like, well, how long do I have to deal with this? How to go with this? You know, okay, maybe you are dealing with your ex coming back into the picture and you're like, but I don't want to waste time if I'm going to miss out on somebody new. Well, I can look at astrology and be like, well, look, let's give this, you know, you've got like, what, 2 months until the new person might be around. That's when our window period is. So, yeah, give yourself 2 months to, you know, tap dance around with your ex, you know, just don't stay there too long if you're not making any progress. If you find yourself stuck in the mud again, there's a new person coming in 2 months, you know, and then, you know, or just take advantage of that window, you know, so you can make, I give people options. I don't really give them hugs. Does that make sense?
You're a huggy person,
Yeah.
though.
I'm very
Your
huggy.
wisdom is the warm hug. Your wisdom is the hug.
I'll take that. I'll take that. I'll take that because, you know, it's like, because it's dangerous. I mean, we've all been like strung up on people before, you know. I mean, so sometimes it's hard to get out of it, you know. It's sort of like, you know, it's hard. It's so I always tell people, it's like, okay, look, give yourself some time to properly go through this, but don't stay there too long. You know, don't try and get back in the toxic situation you got out of. It wasn't healthy. That's why it ended.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's it. Sorry, Allorah, we've got a person that has repeated their question over and over again, and I'm just looking at it now. And if anyone would like to pull a card for this, please. The question is from Parsnip Burger. I recently was dumped and am worried that my ex is getting taken advantage of by this guy and his husband. He is still married and all three are living together. I assume that that's living. Can you help me with some insights? Nico.
No, well, I mean, Allorah's sitting over there. She's been twiddling the cards the whole time. Wait, is that for your Beltane Samhain one, Allorah?
I thought it was, but maybe not, because okay. I was looking at this thinking.
There's always like a jump when you talk in the microphone. Okay, so well, I'll go with you, but I tend to knock on my cards, so. What?
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, I can reshuffle, but okay. What'd you get?
I got the 7 of Pentacles reversed.
I got the 4 of Cups.
Yeah. So, ladies first.
Okay. So, in case anybody's wondering, I'm using the lovely Tarot of Vampire. For some reason, this deck and I are best fucking friends right now. Don't know why. But anyways, so I feel like there is some advantage being taken. I mean, I don't feel like you're way off base there, but I do feel like if you're the one offering help, because this is a helping card, but I feel like if you're the one offering help, you're intentionally being ignored right now. You don't see that you're trying to help. It's that they don't particularly want help at this point. And this is what the card looks like, in case you Can you guys see that? No. Yes. There you go. Can you see that? So she is bent backwards by a man, and he is suckling her arm, and she's got blood flowing down her arm. And so that's what my intuition picked up on first, was the drawing of the blood, the taking of the energy. But the fact that she is still, I mean, she's clearly conscious, and she could stand up at any time, and she could look around her, but she is looking face forward. She doesn't want to see anything back there. And that's really what I'm picking up out of this card. And it's this card is an emotional card. Emotionally, they're just not ready for the help. Nico?
You know, one of the things I'll try and hold up the card here, the Seven of Pentacles reversed. So you have, you know, the imagery of the woman, you know, watering the garden. Usually we have something in the garden when we have the Seven of Pentacles reversed. Now, whenever I see the Seven of Pentacles reversed, I always get the message of waste. Now, you know, with the concern about people being using each other, I do feel like you are correct in the situation, but I think it was mutual. I think that, no offense, your ex was using them and they were taking advantage of your ex. And I think that your ex is about to get kicked out of their space because they're not getting what they want out of the situation. And your ex may be kind of doing the runaway, looking for a place to crash kind of thing. And the Seven of Pentacles reverse is indicating that somebody, if not both parties, are already feeling like this was a wasted effort or a waste of time. Now, the bottom of the deck is saying here, my bottom line, and we've got the Judgment card. That fight, or whatever it is probably going to happen here fairly soon. But, you know...
I'm going to do that.
Yeah. But that fight, that fight or that battle is about to happen here fairly soon. Somebody's going to get kicked out of the space, or somebody's going to run away from that space. But, you know, one of the things I would pay attention to with the Seven of Pentacles reversed is the question is the matter of waste. All right. Where is the energy being wasted here? Where is maybe your ex wasting their time trying to treat that place as a safe stop? Where are they wasting their time trying to purchase your ex's love? Where is your ex, perhaps, again, scattering? You know, again, I got that very runaway kind of energy. Both parties are using each other at this time. So you have to be okay with calling a spade a spade. I don't think that their union or their household arrangement, though, is going to last for very much longer. That's as far as I can go with the insight there. That's all I got.
Yep. No, that was good. That was good. Thanks, guys. It was a very, I mean, it was, the information was there, but it also wasn't there, you know. So it's a little bit difficult. It was a little bit difficult. We do have one particular question here, and I think then we should start pulling cards. It's one that I just, oh dear, it just scrolled out. It's a message here from someone named Mandy that I can't find, but it was a question. Amy Fentress says, how do you start a reading with a newbie client so they understand what you do?
So we all paused for a second. So I was like, okay.
This, they're.
Oh,
can you hear me?
Now I can. I thought we were waiting for somebody to go, so I started talking. But if you're doing your thing, do your thing, girl. I'll back away.
No, it's okay. I was just saying that I've already kind of explained this a couple of times. Sorry, that's my computer. I give the same spiel to everyone that sits down. If they become someone who gets readings from me quite often, this spiel is not necessary because it kind of sinks in and they remember how I read and so forth and so on. But it's just those basic things of explaining how the tarot works and how, you know, you just have to go all the way to the basics, or I do, with explaining, okay, I am not a fortune teller. I read tarot. And to me, tarot is of options. And your actions can change the cards. And then I go into the explanation of minor arcana versus major arcana and so forth and so on. And so I feel like with a newbie person who's never had a tarot reading, I also like to incorporate my guides. I will work with your guides if they step forward. I will hold a safe, sacred space. I take my craft very seriously. This is not something that I do for entertainment, because tarot is classified as entertainment if you do it professionally, which I think is, it's not a game to me. And so I basically, just break it down that way and say, this to me is a very spiritual practice. When I read in energies of energy or deity or whatever you would like to call it, and I get all kinds of guidance when I read. And so I go more into kind of the spiritual side with people who have if they have just no clue what tarot is at all. I will do that, as well as the roadmap explanation and how I look at tarot and this and that. And then I'll also explain as I go along what suits mean and what different symbols I'm picking up and things like that. But I kind of covered all that mostly, just not the spiritual stuff.
That's very good. That's very good. We do have a question that we could essentially read on, and it's hang on, where was it? Emma-Lise Moonstone writes, hope I pronounced that correctly. I have a final exam Wednesday. My Masters of Social Work graduation hinges on this final. Any messages for me?
Well, I can go ahead. I mean, I'll tell you, I do fortune telling. My way of opening up for people is, I always say, look, I do both tarot and astrology at the same time. If you have a preference, some people prefer tarot, some people prefer astrology. I don't take it personally if you do, because I got both. Let me know. Some readers, just open up and tell you the information that comes as soon as you sit down. I am not that reader. I expect that you come with specific intentions and have a reason for being here beyond simply wanting to have the experience of having a reading. So I always say, like, what are you doing here? In a different way. Obviously, I phrase it a little bit less abrasively, but I will say, I'm very interested in specific questions. I'm very interested in looking into, how this is going to play out for you. The more specific you are, the more specific this will be. You don't have to tell me your story. Don't tell me everything. Let me do some work. But if you say you just want to know about love, then I'm going to say in what capacity. You treat this with respect. That's how I look at it. I mean, most of the time people always do anyway, so you don't have to sound as harsh as I just did. But let's have a look and see what's going on with your school thing.
Should we all pull on this one? We could all have a little pull. Let's all have a little pull on this one. I think you should go first, though, Nico. Set the tone with your amazingness.
Are we all pulling tarot or what? Do we need some sugar?
Whatever you're rocking there. Yeah. Oh, whatever you're rocking. I think some vampires is perfectly good sugar.
Would you mind reminding me what? Okay, final exam Wednesday. Okay. Masters of Social Work graduation hinges on this final. Okay. Any advice? Well, just don't screw up. Kidding. I'll be right back with the card.
Start with that. Don't choke. But really. Yeah, so. All right, as Nico is thinking, there's a question here from Mandy C, and she has written, how do you tell a client who you work with a lot, who seems to be pushing for friendship, that you want to keep the relationship purely professional? So how do you draw that boundary?
I just say, if it's not mutual, we're not going to be friends anyway, regardless of the nature of our initial connection. Now, just to be honest, it's like, I mean, I'm not feeling, it's, if you want to be friends with somebody, but you're afraid you don't want to cross that professional boundary, it's okay to be friends with them, in my opinion. If you don't want to be friends with them and they want to be friends with you, don't be friends with them. It's the same thing as if they were just your neighbor or a coworker, you know, or anyone else. You don't have to be friends with somebody. Again, this is the problem with having a situation that is so entangled now with, you know, this whole like self-empowerment journey stuff. There's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, because I think that's very important and very healing, but it makes us feel like we are obliged to sort of nursemaid everyone. And I don't, I've got cards here too. Let's just talk about cards. There's a jumbled mess of an answer.
I like it. I think that this is the case of like no professional entanglements, just like doctors don't date patients. If you don't feel like you want to be a friend with a client, then you can stay. From a professional point of view, it would be unethical for me to cultivate a friendship out of this, you know, client, you know, professional client relationship, and it would be unethical for me to do so. So just letting you know, and you don't have to be harsh when you say it either. You can just say it and be professional about it, and then leave it at that. You know, don't be emotive, don't attach any emotion to it. Just sort of draw the line there, make the person understand that it's a, you know, it's a matter of business, it's a professional decision, and that, you know, you're being ethical in your approach to this. So that's what I would say. Let's pull some cards.
Okay, so here's what I've got for your final, sweetie. So right away for the first card, I drew two cards. I asked what is going to be the primary content of the social work and what you need to understand about this, okay? So what your advice is, because whenever anyone says any insight, I'm sorry, I hate that question. I really do. Just little insight into how I operate. I hate it when it's like, any thoughts? Because my observations are my observations as NICO. So I kind of took it and decided to go, all right, this is the question I would ask. What's going to be on the test? What do you need to study for the most? So let's talk about that. So the temperance card showed up for, you know, what's going to be on the test. Now, the temperance card I'm looking at, as far as this is concerned, when it comes to social work, the vast majority of what's going to be the topic of the test has to do with either rehabilitation, reintegration, or anything where you're kind of getting people, obviously with social work, you're trying to get people back on their feet, but the vast majority of this is going to be dealing with adults. And most likely, I'm not certain, perhaps what area of social work you're focusing in. If you're dealing with rehabilitation for people who are coming out of, say prison or out of hospitals, maybe it's rehabilitation for people who are getting off of drugs. But there's going to be a big focus on reintegration and on how to also work on special programs with this temperance card. So we're kind of blending this, you know, both sides of both worlds, and you want to be testing yourself, studying more on how to reintegrate those things. It's not, the testing's not going to be so much on follow-ups. It's not going to be so much up, you know, on that world. The 10 of Wands upright, as far as what you need to be prepared for, is that basically, I mean, yes, it's going to be a huge test, but I think that you might be oversaturating some of your studies on some things that might be a little bit small. You know, and I would focus again on the blending, on the integration of, you know, the integration aspect of social work here. Again, getting people back out into the world, getting people, it's not just about them getting the benefits, it's about getting them back to work. It's about getting them in the, you know, again, the rehabilitation programs, you know, reintegrating people back into society. Either they're coming from a place where they could not be there because they were in recovery, whatever's going on. So I hope that makes sense. I normally I would, if you and I were sitting down, I would make you be more specific than that, or phrase the question a different way, but I hope this helped.
Fabulous, fabulous. I've got one. Mine's pretty straightforward. This is the Enchantress of Wands from the Tarot of Delphi, which I feel like I pull every single time I touch this card. Basically, that's how I feel. Sorry for nudity. It's darling though, isn't it a beautiful card? For me, this is actually talking about the nature of the approach and the necessity to be incredibly confident. The Queen of Wands, to me, she's very down to earth, but she's also a woman of action, and she's charismatic, and she's, above all else, she's extremely confident in her capabilities. And so I also pulled a card from the Earthbound Oracle, and it's about the guide. you know, the inner compass. And I think that it's calling for a sense of certainty within yourself. Like if you're doing the work and you're actively studying and you're doing it hard and you're doing what's necessary for you at this moment in time, then walking into your study hall or your exam hall with confidence and checking in with yourself and your inner compass and understanding what is necessary for you in that moment in time is going to be beneficial to your approach. And that there is a lot more fire. There's a lot more fire to this situation. Like there's a lot more heat from an internal perspective and also an overarching perspective. Obviously, whenever we see any element of wands, we understand that there's a little heat here. You know, there's a little pressure, there's a little ambition, there's a little, you know, something there, you know, and a little magic as well. Fire to me is the other element. It's the element that doesn't exist, you know, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in our particular environment. We have earth and we have water and we have air, and they're constantly present, but fire needs to be called into being. So this is an invocation essentially of an archetype that's going to bring to you a sense of power and prowess, and the ability to be incredibly astute and in control of your situation when you walk into your exam room. So harnessing a bit of the energy of the Enchantress of Wands to assist you as you approach the task, considering everything that Nico said as well, particularly in the 10 of was it 10 of Wands? The 10 of Wands department. So.
And to add to Avalon and Nico's card pulls, I pulled one too. And interestingly enough, on this, really know if you can see it, but there's the symbol for Jupiter in the middle, which is also the planet of luck, and everything is rolling in your favor. The wheels of fate are turning in your towards you. There's also multiple colored roses featured on this card, and this I am intuitively out. Make sure, you know, and this is something that Nico touched on, make sure that you're evenly spacing your study, and that there's not certain areas where you're focusing more or less, and just as long as you have even distribution and you heed the advice of the cards, everything that Nico and Avalon have said, the wheel's in your favor. So don't stress too much. Bring it back to center, calm down.
Fabulous.
Yay.
Fabulous. All right, I think that's pretty much all of the questions as far as I can see. Does anyone, oh, hang on. Oh, no, that's it. No, that's the same question. I just got caught up on the same question. Tori, yes, he is. Tori says, Nico is so smart that it hurts me. All right, guys.
Thank you, Tori. Mwah. Thank you, Tori. Flattery will get you everywhere with me.
Dulcie Marie posts, I'm starting a year in a day path. Any advice? I'll pull a quick one for this one if anyone wants to. I'll just pull a real quick one for this. Oh, you know what? I'll go. Yeah. I'll go my Earthbounds. I'll go.
Yeah,
Earthbound.
well, I mean, I kind of wonder. Okay, fine. I'll grab the Forest Fairy since we're doing year in a day. We're going kind of more the Celtic-y way.
Do it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to open up with the, what is it called now? Earthbound Oracle by Skull Garden, in case anyone wants to know. Death. Woo! I love it. I think that in consideration to the question, you are starting your year in a day path. This means that you're switching an aspect of yourself off in dedication for a new facet in your life, a new entirely exciting path. Like a year in a day is no small feat. If you adhere to your year in a day, and let me just say this, it requires consistency. If you adhere to your year in a day, then you are essentially releasing a facet of yourself and bringing into being like a new element. And at the end of that, there is a rebirth. There is that cycle of rebirth because you've completed your year in a day. and you have learnt the lessons that are necessary, you get to say goodbye to the ignorant side of yourself. And I use this term in jest, but you get to say goodbye to a facet of yourself, and to bring into being that reward of knowledge which you have cultivated over time. But in order for that to happen, you have to release something and then accept something and make do with that brilliant new acceptance of knowledge and experience that comes your way. And so death is such a beautiful thing. I also like it because most people start their year in a day at the time of just before Samhain, and it's Samhain over here, and so I really like that. I just like it for its moroseness.
I pulled 3 because it's kind of hard for me to do this oracle in ones for some reason. And so in order, for you, I got the card of bliss first. I don't want to focus too much on the subtitles and fall into the oracle trap, but you know, if you want to know what the subtitles are for bliss, it says contentment, satisfaction, and security. So one of the things I think you should pay attention to with your year in a day is that this is actually primarily, I get a very solitary focus on this, even though you may be a part of a year in a day program, but at the end of the day, you are coming out of your year in a day program alone. You're going in alone and you're coming out alone. And the bliss is basically saying, you know what, you will have probably one of the easiest spiritual transitions and one of the easiest spiritual experiences if you are allowing yourself to focus on staying solitary. You can have friends, of course, but you are, any trouble that you may get into spiritually, emotionally, socially during this time, it would be because you invited it in. And so the card of bliss is saying that your bliss is a choice. You're going in with bliss. Giving that up is not, you know, it's not something that you have to do. Sometimes in the spiritual communities, you know, we all share, we all bump auras with each other. So focusing on your bliss, what's interesting here is we got the card of Isa or ice here as well, stillness and delicacy. I think that for the most part, you are going to find that it's okay to be alone, even in a coven, even in a group. It's okay to be doing your own thing. It's okay to be the only one doing it the way you do, unless it's a learning coven. But, you know, whatever you take home on your own time is fine. The Isa card is also saying here again, you are going in alone, you are coming out alone. But what I find most interesting is that the Hedge Witch, okay, this one talks about secrets. Your good behavior, or I guess you could say your ability to avoid drama on your spiritual path for your first year in a day program is actually going to allow you to be perhaps even, I'm not sure if you're in an initiate program, if you're in a dedicant program, if you're in a degree program, but for some reason I kind of have you being discovered, almost the way you kind of see me get discovered on X Factor or something like that, you know, for your gifts and for also, again, maintaining that bliss, if that makes sense. It's sort of like, you know, when you think about powerful witches, the truly most powerful ones are not the angry cliches talking about binding people and cursing for, you know, for feeling better about a situation. You know, there's an air of dignity and peace. They've got their weapons, believe me, they do, but there's an air of strength in them, and I think that that's the message that's kind of coming through with these oracles. I mean, wouldn't you agree, Avalon? I mean, it's not, you know, those are the bitches you got to watch out for, the ones who are totally chill.
Exactly.
It's always the quiet ones. Oh, and I pulled one card to address this topic as well, so I got the Queen of Skulls, which in Rider-Waite-Smith, this is Queen of Pentacles. And in this deck, she looks okay, so she's sitting on a throne and she's got her head cocked to one side and she's wearing a pentacle, and next to her is a blind, I don't know if it's, I think it's a dog. I don't know if it's a wolf, but anyways. So like the intuition that I'm getting from this is, and this is going to sound so like such an oxymoron, but through your year in a day, practical intuition. So dude, it's all about resources and things that we have, and money and time and any resources you can really think of, energy. And the dog or wolf, whatever it is, being blind is kind of the message more so than the queen herself. you have to learn to feel things out and be intuitive in a practical sense. Because when you get emotions and intuitive hits, sometimes as an intuitive and learning to be intuitive, you can very easily get carried away in that and have knee-jerk reactions. And I think this card is really about take time, be analytical with your intuition. If that makes sense. I hope that made sense.
It did. It did. I've just come across another question here from Amy. So I pulled a card really quickly for her. If you guys want to pull a card too, by all means, feel free. But I just thought I'd do this really quickly for her. The question was, I have a final deadline soon for university, and it's getting, and it is a pretty stressful time. Mainly, I have been feeling in a rut, have lost confidence in my work. How can I get out of this rut? And so I shuffled, like I said, I already pre-pulled for this one, and I got Temperance. And Temperance to me is such a beautiful card of alchemy and synthesis that like the message for me here for you is specifically to really identify the unique elements in your approach to anything. It's particularly here for your craft, your studies. You have such interesting elements. You have such, beautiful ingredients that you have cultivated through your learning process. And now is a time to actually create some sort of synthesis between all these beautiful strands of knowledge that you have currently cultivated in order to do your best and to be able to deliver your best. Temperance is a little bit about biding your time as well, and not forcing yourself when when it just isn't there. But of course, when we're talking about deadlines in university, there is a timeline that we need to adhere to. So we need to then begin to mediate the influxes of energy and the stresses that are coursing through our bodies, so that you can maintain a clear head and a sense of clarity, and understand that you do have the elements necessary in order to do really well at what you are achieving or what you're aiming to achieve, and that you just need to create a sense of synthesis with what you know practically, what you know academically, and how you feel about those things. They do, when you present your information, they are uniquely you. They're not just byproducts of they're not just by rote readings of lectures and guidebooks. You really need to be able to put your own spin on that, and that comes down to careful balancing of elements and a good synthesis. So that's all I got there. Sorry, Amy, if that wasn't a lot. Right, Kiddlywinks, anyone else? Should we wrap it up?
I'll get her. No, kidding.
You going?
I'll get her. All right, so I don't know, for some reason I felt like more than one card was needed for this one. I went back to tarot. And I found it very interesting because I had to look and see what the problem was. Like, what is the rut? What's your core issue? What's going to give you the soonest relief? And how do you do it? And so I got the Three of Wands reversed, immediately followed by the Two of Wands reversed. So there's a bit of a countdown going on, and I do pay attention to countdowns in readings. So 3, 2, 1, that kind of thing. Now, with the problem being the Three of Wands reversed, I kind of feel like maybe your issue with your rut has to do with the fact that I don't think you've had a breakthrough in a while. With the Three of Wands reversed, I don't think there's a sense of I don't think you have a sense of traction at this point in time, because you're not feeling, there is no breakthrough. You've got, you've got university, you've got this rut, but where is this wash, rinse, and repeat? Where is this copy and paste for you? And also at the same time with the Two of Wands reversed, when are you not admitting that to yourself? Because the solution to this situation here, with the Two of Wands reversed is basically saying, there's something that's not being articulated correctly, and I think that maybe you might be burning out at work, or getting a rut at work, or a rut at your job, because you are trying to live by rules or abide by rules, or maybe even a code of ethics, or a work ethic, essentially, that is very piss poor in articulation, that is not very clear. And so you're kind of, everyone's kind of wandering around in a fog and a mist. There's no sense of achievement. And I think that might be, something to look at there. Like, how do I get myself some instant gratification? How do I make a permanent dent? Okay. but yeah, let me know how that, I think that's what's going to get you out of a rut. The rut has to do with, again, I think the wash, rinse, and repeat, and people just not articulating that, you know, that switch in ethic there.
Beautiful, beautifully said. Allorah, do you have anything to say?
I do not, because my video feed is super laggy, so I heard nothing of what you guys said. Sorry.
No worries. I think that might be our gentle nudge from Mercury to wind up our particular hangout, because this went on, did it not? I mean, can you blame it? Such awesome elements, such awesome people. I'm talking about Nico and Allorah, not myself.
For the course of 45 minutes, 3 hours, 45 people consistently and more for 3 hours. That's pretty damn good. So
yeah,
that's awesome. That's fabulous.
Absolutely beautiful. Really appreciate all the viewers and the questions that came through. There were some really, really interesting subjects that were brought to the forefront. The concept of a reader's rescue, I think, was really well discussed from various different points of view as well, considering everything from, you know, asserting boundaries to respect to cross-cultural, communications. There was so much covered. I think we've done incredibly well with the time that we've been given. And I mean, it's easy to go on and on and on, and let's hope that we can have Nico back, because he's an eloquent speaker, just a powerful mind in his own right. He brings an element of this beautiful philosophy that he manages to articulate in his own Nico way. And let's hope that we can have him back soon. And we might just wrap it up now, guys, and say our goodbyes. And thank you once again for tuning in with us. And it was just so much fun. And thank you for making it such a beautiful environment and a great space and a great exchange of thoughts and intellect. Any words? Anyone?
No, it's fabulous. No, it is great to be back, and I do want to come back. And honestly, I would like to just, I mean, shit, I should probably just make it a habit of doing a reader rescue somehow at some point every once in a while, just, you know, or just check in with you guys, because I think that, you know, we did in 3 hours, we only scratched the surface. And I think that, you know, but we did damn good for, you know, for what it was, but this is just the surface. And I think that maybe, you know, now that people know it's okay, I'd like to hear from other readers too. I'd like to really know, or even some of the other, you know, other YouTube, you know, readers out there, you know, what's going on with you? How do you do a reader rescue? You know, for those of us who've been doing it for years and years, believe me, you've got tactics. You also got things that, you know, burn you out, and you know you have things that get you back to right again. So, you know, maybe I would love to do that again, maybe sometime next month. Or whenever. I hate giving myself timing.
I think it's an important question. I think it's an important question also to ask anyone that comes on to this Witch's perspective. You know, what is their reader rescue?
And, you know, we should talk about this actually, like, as, I don't know, as like a run-on series, but definitely as like an offshoot, maybe. Like, do a monthly reader rescue.
Well, it doesn't even have to be that. I mean, we could even just do it on our own channels, you know, and just contribute to the conversation on our own independent, you know, solitary one-off non-conversational videos.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to thank Nico for coming on. He was a big part of the original Spread This Witches, and it's great to have him back and be able to pal around and talk tarot again. And yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. So thank you so much. And to anybody who's watching, if you don't already, if you go on Facebook, type in Spread This Witches, you'll find our Facebook page, and that's where you stay up to date on what the next events are going to be and when they're going to be.
That's it. That's it. Beautifully said. So thanks everyone once again, and we look forward to hanging out with you next time. We did miss our beautiful Jessie Huntingberg. She was unable to attend, but a shout out to Jessie. She was here in spirit, and no doubt she will not watch 3 hours of replay, but she has been here in spirit. So with that said, beautiful souls, much love, many blessings. Please look after yourselves, and we will chat to you in a fortnight.